This is the web interface of that box. So it's really weird. By the way. He told me it's like make sure that it's LPCM 48 inches. Okay, we'll figure it out. I just feel bad. Well, don't get back on the system.
I'm reading that too. Wouldn't change anything. The vote, but it would.
You just take a wireless mic.
Well, if no one's, I'm not off now.
Yeah, but we don't have, we're missing how much is this one?
Work session to order for the Planning Commission today, and we're just going to get going. I know Chris probably will be coming in a little bit later, but there are several things that we plan on talking about today. We'll go over those in just a moment. Let's start with a prayer. Do we do Pledge of Allegiance for a work session? Do we do prayer for a work session? So that's what I was going to say. I don't think we do. All right, let's just go ahead on the agenda that we were sent by Jay. There were several things that we've been asked to talk about. And I'm sorry, I can't get it on my computer. I can only do Dropbox stuff. So I have to see it on my phone.
I'm trying to bring it up right now so that it's on the screen here.
Wonderful. That'd be great. They'll put it on here, I think. Okay, so we're going to talk about...
Or no, it's not there. It should be. Why is Stephanie?
Ah, perfect.
Oh, that's...
Thank you.
It's dinky. Let me try and get it bigger.
We'll get it, yeah. I'll get my glasses out.
How's that?
Perfect, thanks. We're going to talk about the active transportation plan, which we got into a little bit last time, but for other reasons, I think. We went over that. we talked about dividing up and covering the trails in our area. The plan was a first attempt, rough draft by this firm, and want to know if there are any areas in your areas, because we're kind of spread out throughout Highland, that we'd like to discuss. So I'm fine just going through each of us and we can list those things. Is there someone that would like to act as sort of as a recorder for this work session? Someone who's got well, I just mean just for notes and talking. I just mean for rough notes and talking. No, you're just gonna keep us close back in until I grab paper from, because I thought I had my notebook in my car. It's not there. All right, if we could just go through each of us or different areas. We talked about covering the trail system in a constructive way compared to what we saw. If there needs to be corrections, specific problems with flow, or as we kind of discussed last time, it wasn't really feasible because of the terrain, which we'll be talking about today in Planning Commission about some of those areas that are more protected lands because of soil quality or slope or any of those kinds of things. So, would anyone like to start with that? Jerry?
Just a point. I know you'll be looking at each other as you're talking, but try and bring your microphone a little bit closer so that as you turn your head, it can still we can still pick you up on the microphone. I was just telling you that much nicer than Stephanie would.
It's good.
I think my biggest thing from the last meeting was just not putting trails where they're absolutely not going, because I think it confuses down the line, because everybody goes, well, it was in the general plan. Like, I think they showed a trail through Bull River, which will never happen. They're showing trails, I think Chris pointed out some, like you said, the terrain was bad. And, I mean, in their defense, they're just looking at a flat piece of paper and saying this would be nice. But if we could have the input to say, as the locals, to say, well, that's not, just take that off. It's not going to work. Maybe put it over here, or it's got to go along a major road. Because sometimes, late on in a trail system, if they didn't get all the stuff during the entitlements, the trail ends up on the sidewalk at some point to be able to connect it. Mm-hmm. But to draw it on somewhere where there's no entitlement, I just think confuses everybody, because people will stand up at the stand and say, well, it's in the general plan. Well, yeah, but...
And future planning commissioners that come,
I just think it could be a little more realistic.
We're going to go, are we supposed to make this happen?
Yeah.
And it'll be another uproar.
Yeah.
So especially with the, what we were told by Jake that, or not Jake, but Rob, that
the other bald guy.
you can't use private property.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
none of that proper...
I felt the street plan, like the street traffic, like what's going to be collectors, what are, you know, arterials and that kind of stuff, is totally plannable, because the city owns all that, the roads are there, and then they have right-of-way where they can expand. Where I felt it lacked was just in the trail system. They just kind of randomly... I'd rather have no trail system and just show existing trail system than one that's just not. Because I think somebody getting a hold of that on the website is going to go, oh man, there's going to be a trail system here, I'm going to buy a house here, you know, or whatever. And I'd rather there be no trail plan, or just existing trail with possible, if they own the right-of-way, because we do have a lot of places where we can't put a trail where we own a right-of-way, but we also gave away a lot of right-of-way that the city no longer has. They just gave it up. And so my issue was more on the trails, just being more realistic, and I thought people, if we had to be able to tell them that that's just not going to work, versus them just looking at a flat piece of paper. The road part, I mean, it's basically left to engineers and planners, and the right-of-way is there, and we do need to coordinate that with Alpine, so that they're not putting a main arterial over here and ours came in over here, and they're not lined up, that sort of thing. So that was I know Chris has specific trail issues.
So I was just going to say one thing to Jay. Is the map that is available to the public showing, well, because I know this last year we dealt with a lot of encroachment issues, where a bunch of the land that the city owned that could potentially be trail or used for trail was encroached by citizens, and we went through the whole process of letting them know, and then some of it was sold. Do we have an updated map showing what has been sold and what we are keeping and anything like that?
No, it's an ongoing process. It's, you know, all of the sale and negotiation of those sort of things is not over and done. So we don't have a final, hey, we've taken care of all the encroachment and here's what the city map looks like now. We're doing it subdivision by subdivision, and I think we're only one out of 3 out of the way. So we're still at the start of that process.
Particularly in that area up where all the biking trails are that meet
Yeah.
through Alpine. There was a bunch of encroachment stuff going on there too. Is that stuff we're keeping as a city, or we have sold?
To my knowledge, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
And so we're having those discussions, subdivision by subdivision, property by property, discussing with Public Works and Parks as to what is the plan for that particular part of the city's property. Can we sell it? Should we sell it? Or do we have designs for a trail or some sort of open space
So you guys
park,
are
whatever?
checking to see if there's a
Yeah,
potential trail?
We're going
connectors?
through that. By the time the active transportation plan is adopted, we have the funding and the ability to move forward and really start going on it. I would expect that we will be through this encroachment process, encroachment remediation, whatever you want to call it. So that said, I lost my train of thought, so.
So I was just seeing as
But yeah, we
commissioners, if we
don't
knew
have
what
anything,
still was
we don't even
accessible.
have except for what was in the packets, and if people know, or informed enough to know that they would go in and find the active transportation plan packet, but we don't have it like, hey, take a look at it on our website. So the citizenry at large, have they all looked at this? Likely not. I would imagine you and maybe a few other very interested parties are looking at it. So
What I think
we
would be
appreciate your discussion tonight to better refine the trails map. Keep in mind that as you do talk about what is on the map proposed by the contractor, the name escapes me right now. Horrocks, yes, thank you. The idea, if those are not the exact corridors we would use, we do at least want to denote that there is a plan to have an east-west corridor somewhere connecting, having a trail there, whatever. If it's not through that exact property, that's fine.
So what I think would be helpful for planning is if the city would take a parcel map, color all the properties that they own, indicate all their easements that they own, because that's what we control, and then overlay what the potential plan is, and we can delete the stuff that's obviously not going to happen. But I think by having that, we don't start putting in trails on our property thinking we're going to get a trail over here, because when I first moved here, there were trails to nowhere. You get on the trail, just dead-ended. You guys remember that? Or back in the day? Yeah, we still have a few. Or they're paved and then they're stopped paved. Well, part of that was, I think, because the city owned up to a certain point, and they just thought maybe. Well, the other color we should have, so we should have what the city owns, the right-of-ways that they kind of own or have right to, but also undeveloped lands, because undeveloped lands, when they come in to get platted, we still have a say and say, we want you to take our trail and negotiate it in here. After it's been platted and sold off, it's virtually impossible to go get somebody to, unless you pay them a lot of money, I guess. But it should have unplatted, raw land, city-owned land, and we need to know where all of our, we had a complete right-of-way behind Bull River, all between us and Country French. There was a whole trail, corridor, everything, and we just gave it away. We didn't sell it, we just said, eh. Well, that would have been nice to at least have, in case one day, 20 years from now, somebody really wants to try to make that happen. and connect. They said, well, it dead ends. I go, well, we still own it. It's still ours. So I think we need to know what those are and then take whatever this, I think they needed this when they did their thing. Take that and lay it on top and just take off the ones that are clearly not. Or call them dream trails, like maybe someday, but show that they're clearly like, the odds of this happening are next to none. But here's all the other stuff. And to get the corridor, they're talking about a corridor for trail system. It can always be connected. Some of it just has to turn, you have to go onto the sidewalk. I mean, some of the trail systems we have now, you come to a collector road and then you have to get on the sidewalk and go down a ways and then cross to connect to the trail. And maybe some of those will be bigger, but at least it'll be a realistic trail system that somebody can get on and follow. There's nothing worse than getting on a trail and getting lost and then you're on private property. People are like, well, it says here. So, anyway, I think we need those things before we could really put an accurate trail plan in place.
Anyone chime in if you have.
I just wanted to add to it, or I agree completely with what Jerry said. That's almost word for word what I was going to say, but Mutt said much better, so thanks, Jerry. The only thing I would add to that is I'm used to like a executive summary or something up front that I would recommend we have that would explain what our intent is here, so that it would be written in plain English that these color codings are this, and they mean this, and you shouldn't be thinking it's something else. So however you might word that to let people know this is more of a dream and a wish than a reality, or this one's conceptual, this one's we own it, so yes, we can do it if we have funding. So that's the only thing I would add.
Okay, go ahead, good. I was going to say, I agree with that, except I don't think we should have a dream list. I don't think we should add on this some maybe, maybe not, maybe all that, because that's how we end up selling it off and all that other kind of thing. I think what we should do is just find it. We know how big our town is. We know, what's good places, what good places there are to add trails to connect each other. I think we should just do that, even if we're not connecting yet. Have that plan. This is going to come down here, this will come around here, and eventually it'll go into this place, and have that, and then those are the places, with the land we own, those are the places that we just, anybody who wants to buy the land, okay, well, there's a trail going through here. I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, but it's going through. And because the dream stuff is how we end up, I think, if it's like, we don't really have to, because we can get a lot of money for blah, 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 or, I just like to see it.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
So just some background to this. The root cause of, at least in my neighborhood, while we all objected to it, it turned out that the city staff, and let's use that generic word because nobody actually just raised their hand and said, hey, it was my idea. There was kind of this generic city staff proposed this. They used the wrong map that was changed by City Council back in 2008 and then in 2013, but they didn't update the general plan. And so current city staff, no offense to them, just went off the map that hadn't been updated. So it really was just sloppy copy. And we had this discussion at City Council, and the City Council was like, well, didn't we change this 10 years ago? Why hasn't the map been updated? Oh, okay, so here we've got 40 neighbors that are all annoyed because it was theoretically changed. And I could almost bet you that if you were to look at that map right now, it still hasn't been changed. So what I was hoping to accomplish, just discussing amongst us, I'm on 6000 West, Jerry's in Bull River, you're kind of down by Smith's. Can we just divide up, or would you be willing to at least divide up the city? Because I don't really know, like down where Scott Smith lives, by the park and Canal Boulevard, I don't actually know those trails that much. I don't go on them that much. And if there's a way that we could just divide and conquer, and then at least each of us could come back and just say, hey, I've gone on a bicycle or walked it, or somebody's actually gone through this Rabbit Warren and figured out, oh, these trails are actually all practical and really good, or else what looks good on paper may not be practical because there's some steep drop-off or something like that, just so that we can at least help the city staff.
I thought that's why we were here tonight.
Yeah, so that
I
was,
think that's what we said we'd do.
okay, so is everybody prepared to comment on, oh, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
if I had a map and you told me which trails to go look at, I'll go look at them.
That, me too. I'll go anywhere in the city.
And is there any way, maybe we just use a Google map and do it? I don't know if it would show, say, we just needed an updated map.
Or that current map you were just talking about, if we could look at that and
Is the
circle
current map
areas.
the one that was done
The one you were
years ago?
talking
or
about.
Yeah, so the one that is in the ATP, it's just a copy and paste of the map from 2013. I think it's 8 dash, yikes, I don't have it memorized. And I apologize, I couldn't get logged into my city email this afternoon to check it. But in the general plan, it refers in trails, that's map 8 dash something or other from 2008 updated to 2013, which is actually incorrect, but it's what is
Is this in the
referenced.
packet?
No, it's in the current general plan, but the ATP refers to that and uses that extensively, which makes sense that you would refer to the general plan as the basis. But there are some changes to it, though.
Well, Chris, can I just make, I'm just going to make a recommendation. What if you took the lead on this, took a map, you know that I want to,
Yeah,
the people that want to do it, circle areas, text it to me or email it to me, give us a time in which you want us to respond back so that you can gather all the information on the map. But if you took control of that, text each person, just send us just circle and say, hey, Jerry, you go look at these. Even if we overlap a little bit, I think
Yeah.
that's fine. Like, I don't think you need to say this, but just circle. And then tell us by what day you want us to get everything back to you, preferably, obviously, before October 31st, before it snows. But get it back to you so that we could then make a report and give it to staff, that information.
So where are you guys, if you don't mind me asking, Deborah? I don't know
I
quite
live
where.
like a block and a half from Audrey.
Oh,
I'm
okay, so
one
you're
block
kind of
east.
central.
I'm just one block east of Highland Elementary, just almost to
Okay.
the same north.
So yeah, I just kind of had checked out everything in my area and what we all use.
Yeah, and I've done that too, but that's the same, we're on the same
Pretty
trail
close.
system.
And
Anybody have a
then,
drone?
A block east of Freedom.
Oh, actually, that's south.
And Chris, I can go anywhere if you want to send me north.
Yeah.
I don't mind going to trails.
Yeah, I don't either.
If you find me explore other trails.
I've been on most of mine.
I think if you just split it up, we'll just go look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, you
So
guys,
I was just going to bring up, I've already walked the trails in my area because, you know, I took what you said. Lake Powell is in my backyard, if you know where that is. Not that. And really, for me, it was really simple because everything on here is either a city road that's already in existing. There is really little to no development. So the whole, what is this? That area of the city, there's not a whole lot of, I mean, it's all doable because it's already there.
Southwest, yeah.
The Water Conservancy District
Between
pond
Lehigh.
there by Smith's.
Yeah.
Lake Powell is
Off through
the
there.
person it was named after in Lehigh. It's an inside joke, I'll tell you later.
Put me inside
Oh,
sometime. Okay. All right.
But anyway, so I did walk all of those, and the Murdoch Canal is the biggest piece in the backbone. That's already all there. But all of the little dead ends, there's a lot of them that could be consolidated or something done with them or whatever. But anyways, so happy to take some other ones, because my wife and I are always looking for fun new trails or bike trails, but really that area is pretty good.
Are we looking to add more trails? I mean,
No, just solidify what exists and what the plan is when it's finished, if it's ever finished.
Because
Okay.
I think what we have, if we can, what we should make sure is what we have connects to something, whether it be another trail, a Murdoch they, at some point, they should all be connecting to Murdoch, because we've got that long trail going all the way up to the freeway, But, and that'd be ideal, because then everybody get on their trail and eventually get there, if they're really wanting to ride far or do something far. But if we can connect them, that's, not start new ones, but just connect what we have to, whatever, to start with.
Pleasant Grove is really lucky because of their location with the Murdoch Trail. Anybody, because there's a whole other population of mountain biking. So you want to get on a trail system, get up to the foothills to get to all the mountain biking trails, that's kind of accessible. But we have to go through Alpine, or it's up in your neck of the woods where everything needs to connect. Because I see kids in their little uniforms just cycling away to get to all the trails and crossing the highways and doing all that stuff too.
But that one that we have, Murdoch goes, from the high school of our property all the way down through, it turns into dirt on one side. It's like a big thing, dirt on one side and tar on the other. And if we could do something with that, connect, and make sure we get that connected. I think it's all the way through now, I'm not sure. But that's a good trail.
I will say, my wife and I rode from Bull River all the way to Bridal Falls and back, and only didn't have a trail in Orem, I think in State Street. There was a little piece there, but it was really wide. But the entire way through Highland, through Pleasant Grove, we were on trails the whole time. So it's just good that we do our part if somebody wants to connect. Because eventually, when D.R. Horton goes in, there'll be trails through that area over there too, and up over the mountain.
So just to validate what we're asking here, Chris, is we're to evaluate this map and check the ones that are impossible, check the ones that are not likely, and the ones that are okay. That's the scope, right?
And in my opinion, get rid of dream ones that are unapplicable, that have conflict with private property or severe terrain.
Yeah, no private property, severe terrain. And then we don't have to worry about, once we mark them, so we're keeping this, period. So anybody, developer of any kind that comes in, well, that is a trail, and work around that with whatever they're gonna build.
I also think we should request from staff to provide from GIS or have a consult, whatever, GIS, showing all the land that we own, all the easements that we own, because we're going to go out and look at existing trails. We also want to identify future trails, but the ones we want to identify are the ones that are realistic, that this really could go in, and if we ever got funding, yes, but take off, like you just said, all the ones that it'll never happen, just pull those out, the Bull River, all the ones that are on private property that would require condemnation, whatever.
Or that are trapped in and go nowhere and we just get rid of that little strip, unless it's acting as sidewalk or something like that. But.
So I think part of it is we need that information, GIS that can gather that information, color code it, put it on there.
Jerry, do you think Utah County parcel maps, I don't know if you've used the app feature much, do you think
I use it a lot.
Do you think that would work for what you're asking? I love the idea of what you're saying, but I don't know what we have in that realm, and I'm worried about creating it timely.
I'm just going to state what I think the city should know. The city should know everything they own and all the easements they have control over.
I agree. I just don't know if that's all loaded into one GIS layer for you.
I don't know what the city. I don't know what the city uses to track. I know everything I own, all the easements I have. I assume the city has, or maybe they don't, but they should.
They should.
Because I know that somebody came in and we found a parcel of land we didn't even know we owned. I thought we were talking about that, so it might be a good time to inventory the land of the city. What do we own? What easements do we control? And then that way we can overlay.
Didn't we do that when we were doing encroachment? Like, don't we have some kind of map so
I
we
think
knew
we
the encroachment?
identified where there was encroachment happening, that we knew it was happening, but I don't think we did a thorough, this is everything the city controls or owns.
I'd have to talk to our GIS team about that to see exactly what we have that way.
Yeah, explore it.
Yeah.
We should have it.
Our GIS analyst is cuddling a baby right now, so.
Well, this would have been a good thing to spend money on for the people that we consulted with. Instead of telling them to make up a trail, we could have said, hey, why don't you guys go through GIS, find out what we own and what we own. And then from that data, present a plan to us instead of, hey, free reign, doesn't matter who owns it, just go put something on a piece of paper that we can get together with Alpine.
Well, and I mean,
I'm saying that with some attitude. That's not how I felt it happened. But I think, retrospect, I think we go back and reevaluate it that way. The road thing, I think, is fine because engineers look at that stuff and we own those roads and they own those roads. And I don't think there was a problem with that part of it.
And maybe a kind of practical approach to this would be who, like as we chop up the different segments of the city, is there somebody in public works or parks or some kind of institutional knowledge where, without putting a huge burden on the staff, because we realize you guys are running, you know, on fumes as it is from a staffing point of view, but where practically if we do all of the donkey work, that we can just appropriately, as our meeting rules allow us to, meet with somebody, you know, on Jeff's staff to just say, hey, who kind of knows these trails the best? And they can just quickly zoom through with us and say, oh, that's a big pain, or this might be a good alternative, or things like that. But that's just
I
an
think it
idea
would be
for later.
easier for city staff to be able to tell you a one-off property rather than inventorying everything and telling you everything. Just with our personnel and resources right now. So yeah, we could look in, you know, if you're, while you're walking, while you're looking, vetting these future trails, if there's land that you aren't sure may or may not be city land, by all means, make note of it. We can chase that down for you. It's actually available on the county website, the parcel map. You can go on and look at who owns any parcel in Utah County.
and the app functionality is pretty great. Like when you're in the field, you can figure out exactly where you are and whose property you're standing on. But we absolutely would be happy to, you know, also talk to engineering staff and see what map layers we have already in our current inventory there. But I agree with Jay. You know, if you have a property in question, send us an email or, you know, meet with us, right? It probably would be Josh, our Parks Superintendent, Parks and Trails, to be able to answer questions related to future planning there, so.
All right, so I'll do the to-do of just kind of assigning homework. Claude, we're not going to have you waltzing around, if that's all right with you.
He already
or
has.
How are you?
He's been
You've
on
already.
everything.
I do it anyways.
And then our esteemed doctor, I don't know where you live. What?
I live right over by the churches on Mountain Court, right next to the old Methodist church on 6,000.
On Strasbourg. Oh, okay, so we have like a congregation, group of 3 of you.
Hi Tracy, could you please speak into your microphone or turn it on? We can't hear anything.
I live 5950 West, 10324 North, so right off 104th, right by the old Strasbourg Church.
Okay.
That new development.
So I guess where we are a bit lean is just the east side, both northeast and southeast side, but let's figure out some homework.
And I don't mind doing an area that's not around my house.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anybody have any other comments, or would you mind if we switched gears to the ADU topic?
No, I think we've got it.
I would just like to make sure that as staff, we understand any requests, deliverables you need from us.
Who should we give this information to after we go out?
You can email it to planning@highlandcity.org. Both I will get it, Rob will get it, and Kelly will get it. Kelly won't act on anything for another several weeks, but I'm a pretty good replacement. Not nearly as good looking, but you know, so doing our best here.
Do we have a baby yet?
Yes.
We do.
We do.
A little boy.
Yes.
It's a boy, I didn't hear.
A boy named
Oh, good.
Bronson.
And everything went well.
Bronson? Did you say
So-
Bronson?
Bronson. Her maiden name is Bronson.
Oh, cool.
So
Very
that's
good.
pretty cool.
Wonderful.
So.
So I did take notes, Audrey, if you want me to, Audrey did. So what I had was that the city, we recommended that the staff work on on color coding this to reflect private property versus city-owned property and city right-of-ways. So that was the three options that I heard. And then the Planning Commission is going to split up the trail map, and I think Chris agreed to that. And we're going to review that, have a due date, and give recommendations back. That's the notes I took.
And we'll email our information to planning.
Well, yeah,
I think we give it to Chris, he puts it in one thing.
how about this? So I will, in the next 7 days, chop up the city and then just dish out homework to each of us. And then is 30 days realistic?
So my one question is, what is this October 4th deadline requiring us to do? Or I guess I'm not understanding totally what that October 4th deadline is for the,
No, he was talking about Halloween, so that we don't have snow, you know, when we go out.
Oh, I thought the city council had committed to pulling the plan into the general plat or something like,
Yeah,
there was
it's
some
that-
commitment that was, we would
it's
have to
listed
be.
in our packet.
Okay, so here's the way that I read it. So one of the items that we'll discuss in Planning Commission later on tonight is the funding of a RFP to go and request people to bid on
Okay.
fixing the general plan.
And
Yeah,
now
This is
so
a
this
portion of
is,
that, but very much from a timeliness point of view, it's
Yeah.
quite practical.
so the active transportation plan is tied to, it is a component of our city's general plan. And I'll talk about this more in the next meeting, but yes, we are updating, doing a comprehensive update to the general plan, of which this will be a piece.
Yes.
And so what I'll be asking for is, in your packet, there was the RFP document to
Right.
solicit a contractor to work on helping us update that. And that we do need some timely feedback on that before it goes to the city council for approval. So,
So I see these running in parallel, and I wouldn't be too worried about mixing the two.
I was just wondering what else has to be accomplished if, as far as what we're doing and what else we're supposed to do and have ready by the 4th of October. That's, I was just trying to get that clear.
okay, yeah, nothing in particular related to this. We will want this to be a completed component of the general plan before the general plan itself is completed. But obviously, we have a huge head start on this part compared to the rest of the plan, so we'll be okay.
So on the general plan, like we were talking about all this stuff, but would the, you know, this is the trails that we have in our area without encroaching and all those other things, and these are the ones we're going to do, not like hoping, I mean, not necessarily today, like I said, it could be 20 years, but not like maybe, maybe not, maybe just we have and we're going to do, or we plan on, so that they won't get sold out or whatever.
The general plan is still a guiding document.
Yeah, but
And
that's
when
the
you're
one that
planning
people are
that, you
using
know,
apparently.
so far in the future, you can only guarantee so much.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's created with that sort of outlook, but knowing that things change. You know, our last update was in 2008, and I don't think anybody in 2008 could envision what Highland would look like today.
I think, I was on 2 of them, so I think it was extremely different back then.
Yeah.
But we did estimate, well, even the estimate then was way lower than what we have now. It was a
Yeah.
whole different thing. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, good question, thank you.
Okay, so we have about 20 minutes before our planning commission starts. Do we want to talk about ADUs?
Yes, please.
All right.
So presumably everybody's been reading the email, so we don't need to rehash that. It seemed like, to me, that one of the topics for discussion was size. And I mean, do you guys want to put a size restriction on the ADUs?
Yes.
I personally think that it would be a good idea. You had an interesting, intriguing idea of maybe sticking an ADU in a barn, or I'm not literally saying you should do that, but just as an option. separate utilities, included utilities? Does anybody, further than just the stuff we've discussed on that email thread, is there any other?
I just had a question as to what we're legally able to recommend, because I know the state has laws, and I was reading the state laws today for ADUs. What do we have, what can we do legally around what the state has already mandated? That's for the city.
Well, as far as I know, the only thing that the state is mandating is this affordable housing, which really isn't affordable, and low income doesn't work either because nothing's going to be low income. But just this, it really should be more of a higher density.
Well, it was listing that it can't be more than, its maximum is 1,000 square feet. It's a certain percentage of the yard. It has to be 5 feet from the property line, which I thought was stunning because I thought we had a 10-foot.
I think we hold it within our existing setbacks. Yeah. I don't think we say 5 feet.
Right.
An ADU, just keep in mind, auxiliary could be a shop. Like my shop is 5 feet off my back because it's just a shop, but a living thing should be within the same setbacks as the house is in.
And I was looking into the difference between ADUs and what the Utah state laws are for tiny homes and that people are now using them as rentals. And RVs, which is also entered the rental market where you just park your RV and you can Airbnb it. So I was just trying to think of all those and how that applies in our ADU.
Well, I don't think those apply to ADU. I don't think those apply to ADU, but I think what we're talking, like right now, what the city allows is you could put an apartment underneath your house. You can have another dwelling unit, but it has to be connected somehow to the house.
Right.
And why it can't be connected, I don't know. Like I agree with the 1,000 square foot, because on a 2-acre or 4-acre lot, you'd have 2 full-on houses, which is, you don't want to have happen. The other rule that I think we should look at is one of the units, if it's detached, has to be owner occupied. The owner has to live in one of those units. You can't, if you keep it together, do whatever you want. You can make it as big as you want. You could do an ADU that's attached to your house that's 5,000 square feet because it's just part of the house. Because a lot of basements are bigger than that. It's what the state's talking about is when you detach it and it's standing by itself. So my house has one. I have a complete another house, happened back in the 70s. It's 1,000 square feet. My father-in-law lived in there and died in there. My kids lived in there, went to school in there. When I'm in trouble, I live in there. I mean, it's, well, to go with the affordable housing, it actually is affordable housing because right now, as we get older, we don't want to leave Highland, but I can't maintain a 2-acre yard. I can't maintain a 6,000 square foot home. But if I can build a 1,000 square foot detached, I don't have to hear my kids, grandkids, and still live in Highland, that's affordable. I can now live in that. 1,000 square feet is a lot of space for 2 people, especially if it's on one level. Mine's 500 and 500, it's a walkout basement. But they're very useful. And it's in the discussions I've had with council and mayors, well, people don't want it detached because it's like 2 homes. It needs to be detached for the older generation to live there because of all the ruckus that go. I mean, it is so nice. Even when I have guests come over, I put them over there and they can come and go and I don't have to be nice to them every morning, offer them breakfast every morning. They can just come and go. And if somebody wants to VRBO it, they still have to live in the house, be there, and they could have an extra income, so it's affordable for them to stay in the big house if that's what they want to do.
So how do we, and so this is the question, and I know several of us have talked about this. There's tons of these that exist already.
Tons of what?
These that exist already in Highland, whether they're detached or they're within the home or attached garage, and we're getting all these weird, bizarre breezeways to make this accomplished.
Yeah. They go long.
Yes. A foot long of shade. Or
That once they get
something.
approved, they just tear it down anyways.
So my kind of our question that we've talked about is how do we present this to the community saying, we've been mandated by the state to come up with, basically lay it on the table completely, to come up with more affordable housing. None of us want high density more than we are already doing. So we need to account for the ones that already exist so that we can meet this mandate. Let's inventory these ADUs that already exist and count them and let them at least count. In addition to working on
Yeah. And
making sure we come up with specifications for it.
yeah, so the other thing you have to worry about, or that the public will worry about, is if they're on a smaller lot and you put an ADU on it, it's like, oh my gosh, I live in a, so you can limit, you could say 1 acre lots
Right.
or
We've talked about
higher
that.
can have 1,000 square feet.
Absolutely.
Less acre lots can have a 500 square feet, and under a half an acre, you can't do an ADU.
Well, that would be my preference, is to somehow tie it to the size of the...
Yeah, because when you go to my house and see that, people just think it's another house, or like, you don't really notice it, but you shrink that down onto a smaller footprint. Suddenly, it's clear that there's 2 homes sitting right there.
And 6 more
Part of
cars.
that, isn't part of that handled by the requirement of the percent that the second unit comprises? It's what, 25 or 30? I read through all the Provo Lehigh stuff. One of them was 25, one of them was 30% of the non-dwelling property, so that's part of that. But I'm okay if you want to specify a number. I agree it shouldn't be too big.
Microphone, please.
The biggest thing I noticed when I went through all this that troubled me a little in some of them, I think parking's a huge issue, and how you regulate the parking for that. I mean, one of the really things that I think hurts neighborhoods is when you've got millions of cars in the streets, and more of them.
And one of the requirements in other cities I've worked in is you have a 1 off-street parking space. So that's a good point.
Yeah, Lehigh had a weird thing, if I read it correctly, where you couldn't do, it was weird. But anyway, Provo says you have to have at least 4 if you have an ADU. So we need to look at that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was my issue, was parking. There's just so many cars, even with the mother-in-law apartments and the basement apartments now, there's cars. Just
And I think that's also why you would limit
Some
it to
don't
the
work.
2 acres or 1 acre, so there's room to park. Those are great points.
Yeah, so the origin of this is, I just thought we should, toss the hot potato to City Council. They might say, no, we're not interested in doing this, buzz off, and that's okay. But do you guys remember when we had, a while ago, we went through the A, B, C, D, all the way through H. There were all these different options where we could choose to fund a pension plan to encourage city employees to live in Highland, all of those different options. So the state is not mandating anything to us. This is not someone saying you must do this. This is just our prerogative to decide to do or not do, to propose something to the city council saying, hey, you never asked us for this, but whether you like it or not, here's just a recommendation which you may not consider or consider. And my thought, and it may be a bad one, but given that we're not mandated to do this, I would recommend that we restrict it to 1 acre R140 and above, because then if council feels like it's a good idea, it opens the door so that in 2 years or 3 years, if the state legislature gets a little more restrictive, we have got this framework in place where we can say, okay, well now we'll take it and apply it to R130 or something like that. So I actually loved all of the recommendations that everybody that was chiming in and contributing. I don't want to be like Provo or like any other city, but I think in Highland, because we have a big enough, my motivating reason for proposing this would be exactly what Jerry recommended, that we have a lot of people that have lived here for 30 or 40 or 60 years, they've contributed immeasurably to the community, and it just seems terribly sad that we basically have to give them the boot. But their whole social network is really their local community, and it just seems sad that they have to sell their house and then move somewhere. It would be wonderful if we could have folks like in my neighborhood that have lived there for 40 years and we know them and love them, if they could move into an ADU type of separate granny flat or something like that, and then have somebody new or maybe an outlaw or in-law purchase the main home, it would free up some funds for them. But then they're in the same community with the same people that they've been rubbing shoulders with for decades.
And I'd like to add to that, we don't have a senior living facility. And a lot of us are taking care of parents. Or if we owned the property, we would move our kids in to help take care of us. But we'd still have some anonymity, you know? And I'm looking for that for my grandmother. We moved her from Simi, California here. She doesn't want to be too far, but you're either in Linden or Draper, and she can't drive freeways. And so it's kind of like we don't have that right here unless it's assisted living. There's the Charleston, there's that. But if you're trying to have that in between, it really is something that we need to do.
I think that, I like the idea of having it for an acre or whatever more. I think we should have something about off-street parking that has to be involved with it, though. And not just the one car, maybe two, because, you know, you're going to see four probably in the street. But we had the same conversation 30 years ago, and I don't know how many of you were here. It was before any of these things were built. And the sad part is everything we built had 2 stories. The first part thing we built was supposed to be for people who sold their land or their house and wanted to stay in Harlem, and the people getting married, young ones. And everything we've built has multiple stories, and they're fine for young people, you know, but anybody who sold their house at 80 or needs to move out at 80, like you were saying, we don't have any real senior living here.
If you're wondering what we're doing, this is a study session. The real meeting starts at 7.
7 minutes.
Okay, so just zooming through the punch list then, is everybody okay to at least come up? I don't mind working with Jay to come up with a draft proposal, but if we could just zoom through the punch list. So if you're okay with it, what size, or should there be a size limit on it, or doesn't it matter to you?
That's where I wanted to step in. But first, I know we're out of time. The one thing I wanted to add to the meeting, though, is we talked about adding to the city questionnaire. What do we do? Every year they do a survey to add this as a question to the community to see what people thought and wanted so we could get that feedback. So that's the first thing I'd really like to do. But for me, I really would like to push the detached piece.
Yes.
And let the existing code, as I understand it, it will already tell you how big you can go, and all those, there's the things, ADs are already allowed in the city now. What I'm proposing is we allow the detached part. Correct. And we need to put the parameters around that. And the most important thing for me about that is I've seen so many of those in the neighborhoods where we attach it with the lid, as you talked about, the little leg, and it looks horrible. If you had a shop or an accessory building that's placed properly, distance from your house and your neighbors according to the setbacks, you could hide an ADU in there and no one would even know they exist. You now just created a whole bunch of off-street parking that you couldn't if you had to do it the way it currently exists. The size, you're already limited on how big you could make an accessory building. Now, whether we put size or not, I'd say we could figure that out. But the other piece being, there's a lot of restrictions that we want to add that already exist in the code, as I understand it. So we need to find out what that really means and then go for it.
Yeah, so no duplication we use existing code.
Yeah, except the other thing along with parking that's a big deal in my mind is the number of people. What you don't want is the college dormitory, right? And so if you look at Provo's code, they have a minimum of 4 parking spaces and no less than the number of cars that are added spaces, right? And they limit the number of adults.
That's also why you have owner-occupied one of them. Right. Because they're not going to want a dorm right next to them.
Yeah, you hope, but still I think it's worth putting it in. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it absolutely is. Yeah, it's absolutely necessary to put that in because sometimes you think that you're renting to one person and they just happen to have 7 other people that are going to live there.
Yeah, my daughter who lives in Farmington, they just had 13 football players move into a house, so 13 are living in the same home, all not part of the family.
What do you guys think about, mine just went blank. Separate metering? No? Yeah, okay, so,
We used to do that, and they got rid of that.
okay, great. That's the only thing that I had on my punch list, was just a question, so we know.
But can you do that, can you require that if you're building a new detached, you can grandfather in detached? It doesn't happen in a...
The city really doesn't want to have separate meters on one property. It's
Okay.
too, it's
I
from
see
a
that,
management.
I see that on the code for the other cities, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But along the same lines, I recommend for this part of our workshop, we break off into putting some meat behind the skeleton we just came up with.
Yeah, so I think the proposal would be, everybody look at that email thread, go through the list of items. It's already pretty detailed, I think, and then
Yeah, I'll work on the proposal and put it out, but that, yeah, if we can do it via email, great, that's the easiest, but
Yeah.
we just need response.
I'd like to start with email also, and then with our emails, we'll know whether we need a work session or not, you know? And we may be able to just take care of it there.
I'll put it together in the next 30 days, but I was curious as when the city's survey is going out, because that will really help us a lot.
That probably is going, I was hoping to have it out September, October-ish, but I don't know if you're up to date on the alcohol issue in Highland, but there's going to be a survey coming out on that in September. So honestly, we want a little bit of cooling off period. So I don't anticipate the city survey probably until November happening. But we'll start drafting language here in the next month on it to get it ready in time. So, I certainly don't want to drop this issue. I don't see it coming to council until they've got a proposal from Planning Commission and they've got results from the resident survey saying what
Agreed.
they think there.
So based on that, I'll take a couple months to prepare it, because there's no rush.
And just let,
Right. The rest of us would build a nice house, move into it, and rent our regular house. I know a guy that did that. I don't know how well it worked out, but he did it. Well, that's what we're going to, family communes.
good evening, residents of Highland and interested community members, if you are here, please ensure that you sign the attendance sheets in the back,
Okay,
including you with the black hat.
who's in charge here? Why don't I have an agenda?
Get the email in here
For which one?
for tonight's commission. I had it up.
I can't either, I can't find it. Let me see.
Please ensure you sign the attendance sheet if you haven't already.
I can't open up the email. All right, we'd like to welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting today. Grateful to have some people here with us, and a nice full quorum, so thank you for everyone being here, and happy to see Heather again. All right, we'd like to start. Can we get the agenda on the screen, please? Okay, I was just wondering, will it be the whole time on there? Okay, great. Chris, would you please give us the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance? Trent, would you be willing to do that? Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for this beautiful day and for the beautiful city that we live in and for our neighbors that we love. We ask Thee to help us to think clearly and that we will be able to express the feelings and thoughts that we have and make decisions that would be the best for us and each of our neighbors. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and open up some time for any unscheduled public appearances. If you'd like to make any comments, please state your name and your address, and you're going to need to keep to 3 minutes. If there's something that you're sharing that someone else has shared, feel free to say ditto, and we'll know. And maybe fine-tune whatever comments so that we're not repeating ourselves. But we'd like to open that up to you now. I think, do we have the timer up here? Is the clock? On the screen. Okay, the screen will have the timer for you. And we'll open that up for you now. And it looks like we'll...
I have a question. Is this comments about anything that's going to be discussed tonight?
No.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, unless if something's not a public hearing, you would want to take those comments right now.
Okay, so if it doesn't have to do with the public hearing item that we're talking about. Okay. All right. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and go to consent items. Do we have any commissioners that would approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 25th.
A second?
Thank you. I think we all need to vote on that. Go ahead.
Yes.
Into your mic.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, the minutes have been approved. I'm sorry, I only have what's on the screen because my email's not opening up. Okay, we're to the item on preliminary plat for Magnolia Estates. This is an administrative, and we're going to open up a public hearing to this item. But we're going to have Aaron talk about it first, or Jane?
I'll be giving a
Jay?
brief overview
Excellent.
of the development.
Okay.
So, all right, so we have received an application for the development of a subdivision called Magnolia Estates. And it is the parcels you see there on the map. To the east and the west is Snowflake Drive. And it is a general planned use as designated low-density residential of R140. Last November, the city received an application from the developer for the central parcel here. If you can see my tiny little mouse cursor. And then we received an application, revised application later that included this small parcel here and this one here to the east. And so now the application includes all three of those. It is for an 8-lot development. One lot is under 30,000 square feet at 27,412. Access to the development is through Manor Drive and Snowflake Drive on the east. Originally, the plan was to have access on the west side to Snowflake Drive. However, if the city can't require that. It would be a taking of too much property from the developer, especially when there's already sufficient access to the property. And so that idea has been discarded. And so Snowflake on the west will be I don't know if you can see it very well, right here, it's a small little cul-de-sac-like ending there. So the city announced the public hearing on city state website, City Hall, and sent out 500-foot radius letters to all residents within 500 feet. We received no comments directly related to the Magnolia Estates subdivision, but did receive a comment about the Snowflake Drive termination and how that, some frustration about that not connecting all the way through. And so we'll be talking with the homeowners there as city staff to help come to a solution there. Staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing, accept the findings, and recommend approval of the proposed preliminary plat with the following stipulations. The final plat shall be in substantial conformance with the preliminary plat received July 5th, 2023. All public improvements shall be installed as required by the city engineer. The civil construction plans shall meet all requirements as determined by the city engineer. Staff will coordinate with the developer regarding a reimbursement agreement for sewer extension in Manor Drive. And this has been added, the easement at parcel A shall not be a public easement. A public utility easement. So now would be the time to open the public hearing.
All right, if anyone would like to make comment on this, please come up and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you. You're all here for something else. Okay.
Hi, my name is Pam Enlow. I live at 4742 West Snowflake Drive. We had sent an email and didn't hear back from anybody, but this just explains where our stance is and our concerns with the development that is near our home. So this is my husband speaking. My name is Parker Enlow. My wife Pam Wilkin and I own the home directly northwest of the 7-lot subdivision parcel that is up for public hearing later this month. I don't know if you know the history of this parcel, but if you do, you'll understand why us being frustrated is an understatement. I'll give you a little background. We developed our 4-lot subdivision 9 years ago, and we wanted to put a cul-de-sac in to prevent through traffic. We got all our surrounding property owners to support and even got the Planning Commission to be supportive of our plan. After about a year of back and forth with our engineering team, after we had support, we were contacted by Nathan Crane, who didn't want a cul-de-sac approved, saying there was a technicality of us being 200 square feet short for the required acreage on our 4 lots. And if we didn't drop our fight, he would reduce our lot count to 3 lots. We got tired of spinning our wheels, so we opted to go with the city engineer's desired plan of a through street. We even renamed the street to Snowflake Drive because that was supposed to be the name of the street that it was supposed to connect with across an open field. We had originally named the street Pace Manor in honor of the family that owned the land for 80 years, and they were good friends. Shortly before our final approval, the city also required us to put in a short-term turnaround, and the adjacent land was developed. The city promised that when the adjacent land got developed, the new developer would have us put in sidewalks and fix the landscaping they disturbed when they put in the connecting street. Obviously, the current plan doesn't contemplate putting in a through street, so now we are left with a temporary turnaround for the rest of the time. The city actually contacted us a few years ago to offer making a permanent cul-de-sac, but given our homes were built to be on a through street, when the city worker stopped by to show us the rendering, she was embarrassed to show it because our front porch would have been removed partially to fit the sidewalk. We are in a sticky situation because I get why all the rest of the neighbors don't want a through street, but the temporary turnaround we have needs to be fixed in some way. I'd like to meet with you or the developer or both talk about some potential options. Maybe the easiest solution is to make a walking or bike trail in between the lots 1 and 2 and some sort of requirement to help the turnaround look more permanent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question, if you don't mind? So are you on the northern part, or are you at the end of that snowflake?
I'm on the northeast side of Snowflake.
Could you put our screens back to the map, please? Thank you.
She's the property right here.
Okay, yeah, that's
correct?
what I thought. Thank you.
correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It doesn't show very well, but you can see how there is a temporary turnaround there where it eats into our yard, and
Yes.
we're having issues even with soil running down, and it's degrading our property line because this was anticipated to be a few years, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I've never done this before, but I'm Annette Steed and I live 11072 North Spruce Drive. So my house is just down from where we'd enter into these lots here. And I actually like the idea of being connected to more neighbors in Manor, which this would go. My biggest concerns were how the lot it looks like it kind of connects to the top street, which I feel like people would cut through that and it would get really busy. But maybe it wouldn't, because that's part of somebody's lot, it looks like. I just don't know how permanent these plat maps are. You know what I mean? Like, would somebody come in and change it later? Would they start doing the concrete now? But the other thing is, it looks like from Snowflake, so from Pam's property, kind of to the cul-de-sac circle thing, is that gonna be a walkway? Like, what is that line with the dashes? Do you know what I'm talking about on the plat map?
Yeah, that is a, go ahead. Sorry. Right now it's designated as a public utility easement. It would be a walkway or something like that. The only roads contemplated are in light gray as opposed to white. There would not be, they would not be able to put a road from going down from the north
Okay, so we
Yeah,
don't need to worry
street.
about that.
That could not be a
Okay.
freeway at all.
What about, like, I mean, like, where that little line and dash is horizontally, could that be a walkway between
It will be.
Plat 1 and 2?
Yes.
It's marked as a pedestrian
Is that what it
access.
actually is right now? Okay.
Yes. It'll be owned by the city.
Okay, and what about, could there be a walkway up to 112? We just don't have any Highland trails that we have access to. And so it would be nice to like be able to foot traffic access to the neighborhoods, but not,
No, that would be private property.
there's no way to take off that.
No.
Okay.
The only way we really got the access to the west is because utility lines are pulled through Snowflake Drive. all
Because
the
it was
main lines.
supposed to be,
So they're going through there underground, so the city asked that be dedicated to the city as a utility easement, because that's where the city will own the water and the sewer that runs that way. And we asked we just own on top of it, and then the city will have it be a little trail as well.
okay. I like that. I support it as long as the people in Snowflake are taken care of personally, but I know there's also people here from Manor too, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask what the plan is long-term then? If
You'll need to come up back to the microphone.
Can I ask what's been planned for Snowflake Drive as a temporary turnaround right now? What's the foresight for that?
We can't, so there's not a solid plan yet because we can't ask the developer of these properties to go onto someone else's property and improve it because they don't need that access point. I know there was it had originally been planned as either a through or almost a T at some point. Because the developer only needs 2 points of access, we couldn't require a third one just by law.
Sure.
So the city's going to have to look at that and decide what the city wants to do to improve that and fix it up.
Okay.
We know it's an issue
Yeah.
that the
Well,
turnaround's
I guess,
substandard.
how does that work? Because is it like new people get put in throughout the city and then all of a sudden the plan changes? Like, that's my concern, is that our whole lot, we wouldn't have built it at all the way we would have had we obviously known. So now it devalues our property because it's eating into it. So I don't understand how, if this was a decision made from the city and approved to be a certain way, that now we can go back and change it a different way.
It's one of those things that the city gets somewhat stuck because all of this is all private property. So the most we can do is require as many connections as possible and try to plan, and then depending on who develops first. So what happened in this case is this didn't develop first. Had this parcel developed first, we probably would have had a connection between Snowflake and Manor Drive. And that has been a topic that council and residents have talked about repeatedly, and I'm sure you've been to many of those meetings as well. But instead, the property kind of 2 parcels over to the east developed and stubbed out. So they need a connection too. These properties need a connection. Then there's the Manor Drive length issue, and the city was stuck with trying to pick the most we could require from the developer and to protect the most number of residents. The turnaround, long-term, we have to fix it. We realize that's an issue that the asphalt's it's not built as a permanent turnaround.
Right.
And were it to be built, as you know, it would require a much larger turn radius to meet the full cul-de-sac standard. How the city is going to fix that, we're looking at. We don't have a solid answer at this point yet.
Is the developer opening to meet with our neighborhood to discuss potential solutions in this case?
I don't know the developer would be, because there's nothing the city can require from the developer regarding that subdivision, your subdivision. We just can't require them to go over to that other property that they don't own, that they don't need to connect to do improvements there.
Right, but could it be, the layouts change to create something, a different plat in general, where you could extend our street in and make the 2 sides accessible from our lot and then put a division with Manor?
Street through. That was an option that we talked about with the developer. There was pushback because the developer rightly pointed out they don't need 3 connection points for this small area.
It wasn't a connection point. No, I'm just speaking if we push our cul-de-sac in further, 2 lots would join our neighborhood and then it would back up so Manor could come in. or just
similar issue.
other, you know, problem solvings. I think that we can find a win-win, but that's
It's a
helpful for
problem
everyone.
taking property from this developer, because we could request that to be pushed through, you know, the cul-de-sac to be extended out to that property. The developer would push back and say, we don't need to pay for that cul-de-sac on our property. Why should we give up property on our side to do it? Which is a very similar argument I know that you'd be making of, well, why did we have this put in our property in the first place? And again, it's an issue of the timing of all of these private developments that come in. The city can't control, and we try to plan out connections as best as we can, but sometimes they don't follow through the way we wanted them to or plan. And as you know, this plan has been talked about repeatedly, and this is the one that we are now getting from the people who own this and say, we're putting this in now. And they've pushed back on additional connections. We've had discussions with them. It's going to be a city issue regarding your cul-de-sac at the end, or the turnaround. It's not a full cul-de-sac. We got the access through as part of our negotiations with the developer. More than that, we've tried, and I mean, we're open to looking at this. It's going to be a tough sell to get more onto their property than what we already have.
So forgive me for being the dummy in the crowd, but can you just explain what you would, I'm not really understanding what you would prefer. Are you saying that you want the cul-de-sac that you currently have, or kind of the dead end, to be extended into the east?
I'm just wondering if there's other possible win-win solutions. And one of the thoughts would be if the developer took it and extended Snowflake with 2 lots that were designed to be lots that with cul-de-sac on the end of our street, and then still had the access through Manor to reach all the other remaining lots. I just wondered if that is a possibility, if it had been looked at. That seems like it would, I mean, I don't know, because I don't know all the technicalities and the requirements and even lot sizes, but you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't think this will be my forever home, but it's just so frustrating for how long we fought to even get a cul-de-sac, and we were 2 years of spinning our wheels and trying to get it, and then Highland City came down hard and said, you absolutely cannot have a cul-de-sac. This will absolutely be a through street. And now, here we are, and I'm not kidding, somebody had come by our house, someone from Highland City, and showed us the rendering of what it would look like to put a permanent turnaround in, and it is 4 feet from my front door, the sidewalk. So it's frustrating in that way. I understand there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved in this, but just wanted to voice our concerns and wondering if there's a better solution that we could get a win-win out of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that road require a big turnaround, the length of it? I mean, I don't think it requires that big of a turnaround because it's not that long.
So no, the Snowflake, that western road, it doesn't require the full, it would have to be to the cul-de-sac standard, but it doesn't require, you know, it's not a lengthy cul-de-sac. It fits our fire code in terms of how long it is.
Right.
It's just, it hasn't been, the asphalt's a little squampus, for lack of a better term.
No, I'm looking at it, but I'm just saying, I don't think it requires the big.
And I think the city's going to be looking at it. Maybe we can improve it in a way that we get a better turnaround that's a little more permanent and looks nicer for everyone.
But not the big.
But not a big thing. But that's just, it's not part of this. And I think.
But that's a city thing. Yeah.
That's going to be a city issue. And pushing the cul-de-sac into this, so say lot 1 and 2 were cul-de-sac lots off of Snowflake Drive, becomes an issue because there can't be a connection then from Manor coming up and over.
Manor has to have a connection because they are too long.
Both Manor
Safety
and
reasons.
the other side of Snowflake need a connection, and this property in here needs it because there's no access they can get that's within the 600 foot.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about this last time.
Yes.
That was a big issue. Manor Drive didn't want to come through, but they had to because the length doesn't meet
Manor Drive's already too long.
Emergency.
But this provides only an access instead of Manor Drive. Many of the concerns were a shortcut.
Yeah.
This doesn't provide that because instead it bends back to the east.
Okay. That answers my question.
I'm sorry, this lady's been trying to come up. Can she come first, and then you're welcome to go? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Do we have?
My name's Danielle Brown. We live at 4677 West, 11200 North. So we are the property to the right of the long, strange thing, which I'm assuming was originally intended to be a road long ago when that land was subdivided from the original property. My question is, are the property owners who buy Lot 2, would they be able to turn that into an access to their property, like a driveway or anything like that?
Driveway connection?
I mean, it's an odd shape, I know, because I stare at it every day. My front door faces it.
They may be able to make that a driveway connection. It would not be a through street.
Right.
But it could be a private driveway off of that. They do
Right.
have the whole, we call it the knuckle, the little bulb there, and that is considered their front setback there off of that, but nothing would stop them from connecting off the back either.
Okay, so I mean, a driveway wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. We're curious about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I was just curious.
Could you state your name and your address, please?
Brent Reed, 11080 North Manor Drive. And I'm just curious about the turnaround, I guess you call it, in there. I don't know why it's there or what purpose it serves, because I thought that the purpose of that was for like a truck to turn around or something like that, but they can just go straight through, so.
It's frontage.
It's what?
Frontage for those two lots.
I thought about that, but it looked like they would both have adequate frontage. But I mean, that's purely it, just to create frontage?
Yeah, it's.
Without that, the road would barely graze the corner of Lot 2. They wouldn't have the proper frontage on the road.
Oh.
They have to have 130 feet on their front frontage.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, I'm Michael Card. I live on 1127 North Manor Drive. We're relatively new to the area, so all of this, we're coming in earlier, or about a year ago, so I missed most of this debate, if you will. Curious what happens, what kind of regulations or protections we have as residents on this road that all of a sudden is going to start having a lot of construction vehicles going through. Very concerned. We've got a 4-year-old who loves to ride his bike, and I'm not loving the idea of a bunch of construction vehicles going through the area. And I'm curious what that looks like, what recourse we have. We also have a tree-lined street, you know, very mature trees. This street has been around for a very long time, and since we moved in, we had a truck coming through and took one of our tree limbs off, and yeah, just curious kind of what recourse we have if damage is done to our property during the construction process through our street, and also what kind of restrictions do they have that we can hold them to when it comes to noise, speed, all of that fun stuff that's definitely
turn you over to Rob.
Be a thing.
Well, there's city codes and speed limits and sound limits.
Okay.
Was the branch hanging over onto the public right-of-way, or did he drive?
It was quite high. They came through with a very large, tall RC Willey truck and came right close to our side. So it's possible our limb was not in a good spot, and I'll admit that.
Big moving trucks will come through there. They're supposed to have the height to be able to get in there. But everybody has to go through that when the neighborhood comes in. When especially if you're the first person in, you're going to have a lot of construction. But the key is informing the police department if they're speeding. Talk to the contractor. Sometimes it's the same contractor. I'm a contractor. And we talk to neighbors before we go in, and you know, he'll make sure that, you know, if that's a concern, to make sure that those things happen. So and there are things in place though to prevent the loud noise, the speedy traffic, all that kind of stuff.
What resources do I have to look up and understand what those restrictions are, so I can talk to them
Municipal
about
code on the city's website.
Just on the city, okay. And then, is the name of the contractor on the letter you guys gave us? I don't recall. So that we can reach out to them.
They have not identified themselves.
Oh, so then how do I talk to them?
I don't know who's. This is just the land developer. You'll have to find out who. If he sells the lots, if they're individual contractors.
That makes sense. Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
We appreciate the public participation. Please ensure that you have signed the sign-in sheets.
My name is Lowell Reed. My address is 1024 East, 450 North Circle, down in American Fork. But we own the lot that would be the south side of Lot 4. And we went through this process several years ago. I wasn't able to attend because we were living in Washington at the time. But I'm sure that everybody has their concerns about the access and so forth to this development in the back. But I am, as opposed to what was presented, I don't remember how many years ago, if anybody was even here that time that it was presented. But this is far better than what was there, because we were going to lose a very large chunk of property, and likewise, the one across the street was going to lose a very large chunk of property. And eventually, we knew something was going to happen. I approve. I'm in favor. I'm on board.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Marshall, 11075 Manor Circle, lots 5 and 6 are in my backyard. Just mainly a question about if you know what's going on with construction there at this point. There are 25 loads of dirt this high against my back fence, and I assume it was there to cover up the irrigation ditch that became inactive 20 years ago. So does anybody have any idea are they planning on building the entire plot up to that level, or it might be a floodplain problem is what I'm worried about, that might cause water to come towards my house instead of just going straight down? Anybody got any idea what they're doing with all that dirt?
So I'll speak to that. Currently the grading plan provided to the city as far as the subdivision grading plan does not contemplate any significant change in elevation relative to the ground. I don't have any particular knowledge relative to the fill that you're speaking of that's been imported, but the lots will not be able to drain onto your lots, meaning as the lots are developed, the drainage needs to remain on the individual lots
towards the street or something like that.
Towards the street, or they need to create systems in their backyards as a landscape to keep the drainage on their yards. They're not allowed to discharge to your yard, and it's not been contemplated in what we've been shown that there's any significant ground elevation change. So the applicant's engineer is here, they can certainly represent if there's any other intent, but to our understanding, there's always some change when people build a home and grade away from the home, but our understanding that in large measure the ground is going to remain within reason of where it's at.
Well, that's comforting. Yeah, we've always had that ditch there to protect us from any flow coming out of the canyon or something. And I mean, it was only a foot deep and 3 feet wide, and they put at least 10 times more dirt there than I thought it would take to cover up the ditch. But one other question for you. We've always had a pastoral view here out the back door, which is going away now. But are there any city restrictions on the height of buildings that can be put up there?
Yeah, sadly it's 34 feet or 35. Do you remember which? But
35 feet?
Yeah, gargantuan, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. It depends on where they put the houses there too. Our house is about in the middle of the dividing line of 5 and 6. So hopefully they'll put their houses to the side and we'll still be able to have at least a view of their back fence or whatever it is. I am still a little concerned, of course we all are, about the safety concerns of this little Manor Drive becoming a through street. And I think Brother Card mentioned this just a little bit. Is there anything that you can do to legislate some safety measures on that street other than the speed limit? Well, my wife says speed bumps, of course. We've noticed that in Cedar Hills and American Fork, there are some very effective low speed bumps that go up a little bit, go out for a little while, and then come down, which wouldn't probably get in the way of snow removal or anything like that, but would slow traffic down like that. If there's any way that you as a body could ensure that we would have a little more safety for the children on that street, we would really appreciate it. So you probably discussed this at length. I don't know if you have or not, but that's my input as far as that goes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. I think oh,
sorry.
State your name again.
Annette Steed, and I'm on Spruce, 11072 North Spruce. My letter said 7 lots. The letter that was sent out, there was 7 lots, and this has 8. So I'm wondering.
It was a typo.
Oh, was? Okay. Because it seems like this, especially since one of the lots is too small, that it would make more sense to keep the promise of coming across from Snowflake from the west and just doing 2 lots there with a cul-de-sac and then coming from Manor over to Spruce. It seems like that would fulfill the requirements of all the lot sizes, and then you'd have the through street, there would be 6 houses on the Snowflake, and then probably, yeah, I don't know, 5 on that would hook to Manor and Spruce. It just seems like then that would, it seems like you can demand that of the developer, kind of. I mean, I would think you could. And then they might be able to fit 8, especially if you said, yes, we'll let you do the smaller one, but you've got to do it this way. You've got to come through, you know,
Does that lot not meet the requirements?
It does. So zoning code allows
It meets the requirements.
one lot to be under 30,000 as long as it's 20,000 at least.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I misunderstood that. But anyways, I just feel like the developer could do that, and that way you would be fulfilling the promise that Highland gave to Snowflake, that it wouldn't cut into their yards because it was going to be a through street. And then it would, and you'd have the planned cul-de-sac.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing on this and open it up for commissioners to ask. Oh, one more came? Oh, sorry. We'll open it back up.
Thank you. Frank Cowan. I live
Please wait until you're at the microphone before you state your name.
Frank Cowan. I live at 11015 North Manor Drive. We live right on the corner of it, in the main highway there. I have a few questions. One is it mandatory that they have the connection to Manor Drive? Is there any law in there that says, why can't they just have their turnaround in there to go in and out? Because there's other subdivisions that have only one entry and one exit. So if that was the question, mine is it required to hook to Manor Drive? And why? What is the requirement or the law that says it has to be connected to Manor Drive?
So a street can't dead end. There's a length for fire and safety to where it can only be so long without a full turnaround or connection through. And this street doesn't meet that request. It's too long. That's why it's intended to go through, for safety reasons.
Well, for safety reasons also, excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, for ambulance and fire department, is that correct? Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you that that access for the fire department and all that street is really not wide enough for it to do it. Because even in situations that I've had there, when we've had to bring fire engines in for emergencies and that, they can't turn around in there. Yeah, I can't hear you.
That's correct. That's why that street's going to connect so that the fire truck can just keep going straight and get out and not have to turn around.
And then the safety with it, because of it being so small, because it can't park, if you see it on your chart here, you can see that Snowflake is quite a bit wider than you hook up even into Manor Drive. When you go down to Manor Drive, you can see that's even a little smaller. So the area for transportation of vehicles is very limited. And you talk about emergency vehicles, yes, we've seen that problem already many times over the last 40 years. So, and our question with the kids in that, when you originally had the plat, when you were originally going to connect to the, going out west to the Main Street there was a consideration of why, if they put that in there, then that was going to be a shortcut, like was brought up earlier by a lady, that then they would use that as a shortcut to get to the canyon, or in the case when we were looking at it before years ago, that would put more of an outlet for the high school students coming from up in Alpine Net, where they can get past that that jam there at the light. So my questions are basically, I'm looking at what type of regulations, what is there that say we have to do these certain things, and especially when it has to include, when you want our input to it, to see what we think, because you all know what we've had in the past, going over this for years now, so thank you.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing and open it up for commissioners to talk and ask questions and clarify, make sure we understand this too. And it's open. They don't do it online right now.
One thing I did want to raise, one of the stipulations regarded a reimbursement agreement. So the north end of Manor Drive, when the sewer line was put in from the south, it was designed in such a way that it got too high at the top end of Manor Drive, so the top few lots are not served by sewer. In connection with this, we're asking the developer, because they're pulling sewer already through for their lots, to extend it south into Manor Drive to cover those last few lots that are currently on septic, so they'll be able to connect in the future. The developer doesn't need to do that for their development, so the city will be reimbursing them for the cost while they're doing the roads to put the sewer line down. So Manor Drive, those top few lots that are currently on septic will have access to sewer for the first time.
How many lots?
I think it's three off the top of Manor Drive.
Within this development or below it?
It's below it, but so they're pulling the sewer from the knuckle south into the top part of Manor Drive, where they'll improve the road and kind of make that connection. So while they have the road open, we asked if they would put the sewer in as well. And they've agreed to do that. We'll pay for it, but.
And just to clarify, the width of the roads on Magnolia and Manor Drive connectors, those are the standard width. What is that width? So
56.
56, right? Yeah, so it won't be more narrow than other neighborhoods. It's the standard 56.
I have a question about that. Manor Drive, is that, Andy, is that non-conforming or is it 56 as well?
I believe it's 56. I was trying to verify on my phone, and Aaron's opening it for me right now. Developer's engineer might be able to verify for me too. 56. Yeah, the Highland City's standard road has been 56 for a long time, so I believe Manor's also a 56-foot right-of-way.
I just had a general comment about safety. I think all of us are all equally irritated about the traffic and the speeding, and the reality is our only real recourse is just to go whine and complain to the city council, because they're the ones that are responsible for deciding what the speed limits are and whether we're going to permit speed tables or other things. So I would encourage everybody and all your neighbors, show up here with pitchforks, but be pleasant and polite about it, because we do have a serious issue with speeding in Highland.
And manage your children, which I am saying to myself because I have 6 of them. So, I mean, it's a rough job, and it's not just children, honestly, that's not even fair to say. So, yes, that is definitely an issue. But anything on this particular development that you guys have any questions with?
So I had a couple questions, and I think they were mostly answered already by the community's questions, but that bulb on the end of Snowflake, that was a concern for me if we are causing a non-conformance because of our actions. Rob, you explained we don't have a choice, there's nothing we can do. I get all of that. But I did like the residents' input that maybe they could reach out to the developer and come up with a suggestion, because as I look at it, the bulb on the other side, if you switched it out, it could probably make it work. It wouldn't cost necessarily anything more, but the homeowner that mentioned that, it probably would cost you to finish it out. So my question here is, when this bulb was put in, was there a bond that the city still holds that can pay for the work there? How is that work going to be taken care of?
So she was absolutely correct. It was planned to be a through street. It's the little bulb at the end of Snowflake on the west side. It's not a full cul-de-sac. It's what we term a temporary turnaround, and sometimes temporary means they last until something happens that changes it. And in this case, it's just the way all of the properties around this property lie. It's kind of choosing who wins and who loses, which isn't a great place for the city to have to be in. Mindful of the fact that the developer, we can only ask so much from the developer. And what we could ask is, our code says you can't have a connection, a single point of access that's longer than 600 feet. So whichever way they came, if they were to develop all of these lots, they'd at least have to have 2 points of access. Now, where those accesses are is kind of a little bit of a negotiation, but we know we have to the east a cul-de-sac and dead end that's far too long. We know to the south we have Manor Drive, which is still a dead end that's too long. So in the city's view, this is a solution that gets the most access. It's not perfect, and there is certainly a remaining issue with that temporary turnaround that was meant to be a through street that now likely will never be a street. It's going to just be a dead end, and the city's going to need to fix it in some capacity, and we just don't know how that looks at this point.
So to clarify the question, does the city have any funds dedicated?
No.
So there's zero funds?
It was never planned to be a cul-de-sac.
Understand. So the other question is, what stops the homeowners from just leveling it out and taking it back if it's not plotted, legal? I'm not going to use the right words, but what keeps them from returning it to a straight through?
You know, to be frank, the city only owns a right-of-way that's through. The city does not own a turnaround or a cul-de-sac right-of-way. Theoretically, I guess they could tear it out, that concrete, you know, the part that's not in the right-of-way. I would recommend they don't, just for safety concerns and turnaround and for their own ability to turn around in that cul-de-sac, but I guess the city, if they wanted to tear it out, we would have to decide whether to let that lie or go through the whole taking of property process. And I don't think we're there. It's just, that's kind of, we don't have a solution. Now that this is going to be finalized, the city will be looking at, okay, this plan is now done. We know how this road alignment works. We know now there is not going to be a connection. What are we going to do about that?
Perfect, and I appreciate that, and I didn't mean to take too much time, but that was my concern, is we're not causing another problem and a legal battle for the city and all of that. So that would be my recommendation, without rehashing all this again, is to recommend the homeowners there reach out, talk to the contractor. You can do a lot of things on your own. Doesn't sound like the city has the legal ability to do any more than what has been described, so thanks.
And you said the developer's here?
I believe their engineer is here.
Would you like to answer anything or come up, or you're welcome to come up and answer any of the questions?
Excuse me, my name is Mark Greenwood. I'm with ALM and Associates in Provo. And the Lloyds and the Nelsons asked me to represent them as we've been going through the process. This has been a challenging process with this property. Initially, the thought was to go from Snowflake over to the other manor. Is it other manor or Snowflake on the other side? Yeah, to make the connection straight through. However, a few years ago, the council made a decision that the connection needed to come down to Manor. And we initially didn't necessarily want that to happen, but we had to comply with the council's, or not recommendations, but the council's resolution. And so our initial plan came in from Snowflake and down. And then we've had numerous meetings. The mayor and several staff members called us in, and we sat and talked about different options, and they knew there was no great solution that satisfied everybody. And so after many attempts, they determined this was probably the best solution of the ones that we had the ability to do. And because they didn't want, one of the things they didn't want is didn't want the traffic cutting through from Manor into Snowflake and creating that shortcut. And so they were quite concerned about that. And in the interim, we were able to service Manor with a much better water supply in what we're doing. We're provided the sewer for those last 3 lots in Manor that would be able to access that. And then the other thing is we're also taking, it's a low spot down on that end of that drive. And
Near where?
Pardon me?
Can you kind of tell us on the map?
Yeah, the south side of Manor Drive, right where it connects onto the existing Manor. Forgive my throat here a little bit, but anyway, so what we've decided to do is we've incorporated that into our design to be able to make sure that if any water from Manor that's coming north comes in and gets into that spot, we'll collect their water as well and be able to send it, so it'll be taken care of as part of our development as well. So we've tried to do as much as we could to accommodate as many neighbors. We know not everybody's happy with it, but we appreciate their concerns and hope this will be a benefit to the neighborhood.
Are there sidewalks on both sides of the street?
Yes.
Just one?
Yes, there are.
Thank you.
You bet.
Are they installing the little trail there that connects? They are putting it in and paving it and
Yes, it will be improved by them and dedicated to the city as a 10-foot trail.
not just a dirt trail?
Okay. All right, any other discussion?
Can you pull up the motion? I wanted to make sure I captured all of the recommendations.
I'll just state, I was here back a few years when that came across, and the safety issue was a big issue coming down south. You don't want a fire truck going to the end and having to back up. You talk about hitting kids, cars, everything. They need to be able to go straight, those big trucks. And then if that was the same issue on the other side, so it really solved 2 big safety issues. And that's why that became a requirement, because that street did not meet the requirement. And in this way, I didn't know about the flooding, so it's good that we got that, and I didn't know about the sewer last time. So it's good that they have that option to do that.
And then just to clarify something, Rob, and also for the benefit of all of our fellow citizens that are here, the way that the law works is if a property is zoned R140, which is just English for saying it's approximately 1 house per acre, if they meet all the appropriate requirements, we really aren't in a position to say, no, buzz off, go jump in the lake, because it's an administrative action, not deciding something.
Correct.
Okay.
So where we had some issues with access and things, we could work and make some requirements, get some concessions from them. But as soon as they could check off those boxes, we're kind of stuck at saying, all right, you've checked our boxes. We have to recommend approval, and then that's why we're here.
Yeah, if this was a rezone, we would have a lot more ability.
Sorry, can you roll it to the stipulations? That's what I was trying to read. Thank you.
The one question I have, Rob, just listening, because I think we're all sympathetic to the concerns, is just trying to find the best solution. But when the city makes, it sounds almost as if the city's made you know, long before any of us promises? Are those ever codified? Or are promises just good faith efforts that if it works out, we do it? I mean, I guess that's a little bit of concern from the point of view of integrity when people make plans around what sounds like promises. That's a concern, I think, appropriate.
And certainly a valid concern. It's more of a, this is our, when we state something about what private property will do when it develops, it's kind of a hope and maybe a good faith effort that we'll try to get there. Ultimately, as Commissioner Howden explained, it's if they can show how they meet our code, even if we wanted something completely different there, if they say, well, it's zoned this, and I meet all your requirements, and I know you don't like it, but we don't care. Not that this is what they're doing. I'm saying, you know, in general, as long as they can show they meet it, we really are stuck. So the long discussions were more about how would the city like to see this resolved, and what will the city try to ask of the developer? And then once the developer comes in, the property owner who actually owns the property and says, I have certain rights to my property, city looks at its plans and says, okay, how do we get the most from what we want that we can within the framework of the law that we have to work with? And that's what we've tried to do here.
Trying to do any more than that, it constitutes what state calls a taking. We cannot do that. I mean, we can ask, we can try to negotiate, but we cannot legally do that of any property owner.
Thank you.
I have a question about number 5. Where is parcel A, please?
Parcel A is that little trail easement. And I think the clarification is it was marked on the plat as a public utility easement. It's going to be a utility easement, and we want it to be a public trail. We don't want it to be a public utility easement because then whoever, fiber company or whoever we have franchise agreements with might say, well, great, now we're going to tear up your trail whenever we want to put in our lines because it's a public utility easement. So we'd rather that just be dedicated as a utility easement and public access, but not as a public utility easement. Public ownership. So the city owns it, and then there's PUEs on either side.
Yeah, okay, so just to clarify, because the way that I read that sounded like we were saying we're not going to allow the public to go off through there when they want, and we do want little kids to have access.
We do. That's specifically what we want it for. So public utility, I think we're just missing a utility word in there.
So the intent of the little trail corridor is it will be owned and maintained by the city, and so there wouldn't be a need to have a public utility easement on it. It will be owned by the city and used by the citizens.
Yeah, but then can you just go back there, Jay? Because to me, where it says shall not, we need to fix the language there and say public utility. Because right now it says it's not a public.
Yes, if you want to clarify that, to clarify the intended meaning, you could clarify in your motion that parcel A shall be dedicated to the public as a public ownership corridor, and any reference to it being a public easement is thereby unnecessary on the plat. I'm ready to make a motion unless there's more communication. So,
talk more into your mic.
Sorry. Yep, there we go. I move that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the Magnolia Estates subdivision, subject to the stipulations recommended by staff. Do I need to read all those, or can I just stipulate what Chris said? It needs to be public easement or some other word other than what's there so that it's clarified that it's corridor. Yeah, clerical. Does that make sense? So that is have public access, not public.
The word utility is missing there. It should be public utility easement.
Public utility.
What they said.
I second it. We need to take a vote.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you. Okay, we move to the next one, text amendment, professional office zone. This is legislative, and we're going to go ahead. We will have a public hearing, but it's going to be presented by Jay, so go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we had the public hearing at the last meeting, and then we continued this item. And so,
I think you actually closed the hearing at your last meeting.
Yeah, we did.
You opened and closed it, and then we continued.
So we're done with the public.
yeah, so we're done with the hearing, so now it's just the discussion.
Okay.
I don't know how much I need to refresh your memory on this, and the developer, Scott Dunn, is here tonight. One thing that he proposed in the meantime is an update of the style and architecture, and so that was included in your packet, and I do have, this is some of the old architecture examples, and now we have some new examples for you to contemplate. And what they're looking for is some guidance on what style you like the best, that has the best chance of you guys approving it when it comes before you as a final proposal.
Thank you.
So,
I don't have,
do
so
you
we
want-
may be having you flip this back and forth
Oh,
for
yeah.
us to look and
My
discuss. So
fingers are nimble. I don't know if, Scott, you want to come up
did you want to
and-
say anything?
and,
Yeah, please.
explain the,
Scott Dunn, Patterson Homes. So as we discussed last time, we discussed updating the exhibits and then detailing some design guidelines that could go with those. Kelly had sent me some examples, and as I read through it, I thought that maybe we ought to come back, and we've not presented you with enough information for any sort of approval or denial, but what we're looking for is just a discussion. Before we get going too far down the road, spending time and money on a specific style of building, we wanted to bring a very general shot at kind of what we're looking for. And so our architecture group is here and can speak to the designs of what they've put in some of these pictures. But we've kind of directed them to go this route. These generally are kind of the office buildings that we see as going on some of the remaining lots that are in the professional office zone. And if we can get some direction and feedback from you guys on this and have some discussion, I think that'll better direct us on where to put some time to narrow the focus and ultimately bring some specific building designs and some updated guidelines that can fit those.
Thank you.
so we had three styles. There was contemporary, transitional, and traditional. I don't know if you have, anybody wants to speak. Contemporary was presented first in the packet he gave me, and so that's what's up right now. If that's a hard pass for all of you, anyone, we can move on to the next one.
I'm happy to talk to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
I'm happy to speak to some of them if you're wanting some of that.
So this is not in the packet that we received on Friday?
No, it is.
Not all of them.
No, not all of them.
We're missing half of them.
I didn't see all that.
Really?
Where are they?
They're in the
They're,
way down.
While
they
you're
were in the
figuring that
packet, and they
out, I
had
had a
the
question
traditional,
for you.
the old ones, and then they had some of the new.
Are all of these in compliance with the height restriction that we talked about, 35 feet? If I look at these pictures, are any of these examples 40, 60 feet that are not going to fit? Or do you know?
I don't know the measurements of any of these buildings, but what we do design in these architectural design standards will ultimately keep the residential height restriction.
Absolutely. I just, from a visual, I'm thinking, oh, I love that one, and then realize it's 15 feet too tall, then you lop it off and it doesn't look good anymore.
Yeah.
So that's where I was.
No, and that's great feedback, but yeah,
Can
what
you
we,
switch over
we're
to
not proposing to
transitional?
change that.
These renderings were pages 61, 62, and 63 of the packet. So, okay, get you to transitional. And they are looking for style, so when they say, here, this is what this building might look like, obviously, if they're showing a 4-story building here, which I don't think they are, they're looking for the flavor rather than the exact specifications.
Whatever you build has to stay within the height limit.
Yeah.
So just glancing over the whole thing, I think the biggest resistance is that you have a building that's one big flat roof line that just pretty much wipes out the skyline. The building that you did build there that has some of the peaks or the breaks in that roof, stroke down through the, I think
It's in the
next
transitional.
slide.
Yeah, transitional.
We put two of the existing in the traditional, I think, on the last one.
Yeah, the traditional and the
transitional.
Either
Can
of
you
those.
flip through some of these? I can't see the other ones.
I think the
There's only three.
traditional and the transitional have more of the,
Show me the other one.
include enough of the tie-in elements, design-wise, to what already exists, that it would blend better, but be updated, than the, what's the first one?
Contemporary.
Contemporary.
Contemporary is the first one.
Is it more of just a concern of just seeing the flat roof go the entire envelope of the,
Just all the glass, all the metal, it just, yeah, just with our mountains and stuff like that, that's kind of what we're trying to keep kind of a feel. We don't need old-fashioned, but we do need, we wanted it. I think when you look at all the other, we don't need to keep it like it was by any means, but we do want it not so businessy, not like Adobe at Point of the Mountain. Not boxy, and yeah, I don't know, those are just my opinions.
So here's my 2 cents. So on the transitional, that Thrive building, the one on the right, where you've got kind of that old home and then a mod one in front of it, and then in the traditional, there are a couple of those. I think the theme, at least for me, would be something that breaks up the roof line.
And even the staggered one of the one below the Thrive building, the staggered roof lines.
But like in the traditional one, that one in the bottom right-hand corner, that looks like a British boarding school. I don't like that building at all.
Bad memories.
Bad memories.
I think in general, you don't want one big line all the way across. Like if you had that, you would want it to drop and maybe come up. Also have some gables in there, as she talked about, to kind of emphasize the mountain ranges around you, because I like some of those where there's a smaller roof and then you have the peak on the one. I think it's on the traditional, it's on the screen now, that middle top one. Even the right one where you have a facade that still gives you a break of that top, the way that is.
And that it's not all metal and glass.
It's interesting, those other 2 that are on the right and left center, those are those the ones that are over there now?
Yeah. They look like the ones that are there.
Yes, the one, yep.
That you want to get away
and
from,
right.
right?
Well, we're putting it on there. I mean, it's kind of the traditional design. And
Obviously, that's what everybody over there would love to see, but you kind of made the argument that they're too expensive, that.
yeah, and I feel like that's coming from the developer. I'd love you guys to hear that argument from the architecture group, because they're designing buildings for, this is their career, this is what they're doing. So they know what the market is and what's absorbing. And I would love for you guys to hear them speak to the reason why this maybe is not a good idea for a professional office, not just from us.
So you're saying they don't
What
like the
isn't?
traditional?
What isn't good for a professional office? I'm just trying to finish your thought.
If we put a gabled roof on top of the building, we're still using up part of our height restriction. But what we're using it up in is attic space. So we're going through the expense of using up volume that we can actually put offices in. And there's some different building guidelines now than when this was all approved. And like one of those key guidelines are, as soon as we go over 3,000 square feet, we need an elevator. And if we're gonna have an elevator, we also need some common areas and some common bathrooms. And by the time we get the square footage to do that, and we don't have full use of an upstairs volume, it doesn't feasibly make sense to go through the expense to pay for all of that unleased common area. And so the professional offices that are common these days, they do have full use of the second level, which would be our intent. And the feedback on breaking up so that we don't have a building that has a straight top, that could still be done with flat roofs. And that's good feedback. And as soon as we introduce a gable, which is possible to do, it just adds roof height, essentially. So if we have attic space going up to the top of that 35 feet, that just means that there's less ceiling space for the offices. So it's just a balance of design and architecture.
I just don't see the compromise between what's out there and not going to just the full-on box office building, glass office building. We're supposed to find something in the middle, but you seem to be going straight for the all office, all space. I mean, part of the reasons we want the gable is so you don't eat up the entire skyline for the people in Country French.
Yeah, okay, so if we go back to the previous page, so, I mean, if I'm understanding like that Thrive building that you see there, what you like about that is that the roof line is broken up. It's not a straight.
And there's some gables.
Yeah.
Even the one below it, where that is a block.
great.
Where the whole thing's not through.
Yeah, and that one's flat roofs, but
yeah, just
it's not a straight flat roof.
And it's recessed. The facade has got different facades to it, like across the front of it there. Kind of breaks it up so it doesn't look like one big.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yeah, the lower left one seems
It just
to be
blends with
above
what
ground,
we,
and you're-
it matches kind of with what we had, but brings back in functional and a more modern design than what our traditional has. We just don't want to go for straight, like the contemporary, straight metal, straight glass, harsh reflection.
The lower left, yeah, to me is the one meeting some of your requirements for this idea, so you can use your space, but also because of the recesses, different height, it feels more like what I think we're looking for.
And the
The
material.
middle bottom one looks good, the way it's broken up.
Still breaking it up, yeah.
Breaking it up in different materials and maybe slightly different heights, like maybe 3 feet versus. But even some of those gables where you just kind of put it on the front, like the Thrive thing, I don't think that's a full attic there, is it?
No, it's a fake.
Yeah, I mean, I know it brings the height down a little bit, but I think we're trying to find something in between the 3-story box and the house that was originally built, looking thing, find something in the middle.
Gotcha.
And I think those do meet the middle. It sounds like what they're saying, bottom left, left middle, the bottom middle, even the middle right.
Middle
where
right.
That's kind of all broken
Yeah.
up. I mean, that.
But it's not just straight metal and windows with all the harsh reflection when we have the mountain views and you're getting a blaring glare instead.
Yeah, the lower left, interestingly, is very reminiscent of a whole bunch of things I see in the Dallas area that are newer, that use the brick, that use the variations and all that. And they're very traditional in nature, but they're new and they're, yeah, we've seen that a lot.
I agree, I like the bottom left because it's not quite as trendy. So in 10 years, we're going to be seeing all these square boxes with like metal and glass and whatnot. But that one looks like it's kind of traditional, but updated, still modern. And it just looks to me a little more timeless.
Okay.
I like that one too.
Okay.
Agreed. That idea.
So I think as we're looking at the traditional, you kind of got to fill the ones we like there.
Okay.
Go to can you scroll down to this one? So this one, the upper left,
Which one are you on?
on the traditional.
Okay.
I think we've agreed the modern one's kind of.
Contemporary?
Contemporary.
Yeah, the contemporary. The upper left on that one,
The middle.
the upper center one. And I don't mind, I don't know what you guys think. What do you think about the upper right one? Where they kind of broke up the roof line there a little bit. Because then you're not getting into your attic issue, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The one in the middle center, I think, is okay.
Yeah, middle center, that looks like an old downtown look to it.
Something that won't, date itself exactly the year that it came out.
1903.
Is that helpful?
That is helpful. Yeah, this is great. We appreciate this.
Out of those two categories to kind of pull something in. I think
And just for me, the bottom two, the bottom middle and the bottom right one, that just looks like
No.
You know, Usher
No.
Lamb.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And we appreciate you bringing those in, because we didn't know how to communicate our ideas without some visual either, so thank you.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Okay, so potential findings. If the Planning Commission decides to recommend approval of the proposed amendment, the following finding may be used. The landscape and architectural requirements in the PO zone are sufficient to meet the purpose and intent of the zone outlined in the code. If the Planning Commission decides to recommend denial of the proposed amendment, the following findings may be used. The landscape and architectural requirements in the PO zone are sufficient to meet the purpose and intent of the zone outlined in the code, are insufficient.
Are insufficient.
So we have a motion here, an example to use for approval and for denial.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought he was just asking for feedback, or what are we approving?
The discussion from last time?
And he brought us feedback, and we're supposed to.
Okay.
Just continue it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to continue.
Are you okay if I make a motion?
Wait, so, I'm sorry.
To continue.
We can't
To
hear what you're
continue
saying down
this?
there.
Yeah, we don't know what you're saying.
We're making a motion to continue. Is that the design? Okay.
Yes.
So I move that we continue this.
I second.
All right, let's vote.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
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 thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to catch up with the screen changing here. Okay. Okay, so do we have some of this? I'm so confused.
We don't have an agenda. What's up now?
I know, I think we just, I'm sorry, my email's not pulling up, so I'm dependent on your screen, so, okay. Zoning approval for Zana, Julie, this is the land use, we met with him last time, thank you. And we have our recommendations whether to approve or deny. He has met, did you want to discuss this?
Yeah, I can just give you an overview of what's transpired since the last time we met. So last time we met, it was a request, a conditional use for having retail in this zone, which is not allowed. And so the Planning Commission's recommendation was that the applicant come back with an application, revised application that struck the retail component from the application. And so that's what they applied with, and so we're ready to have your, so our recommendation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review both the requested use compatibility with the allowed professional office uses in the development code, which was outlined in your packet, and staff's review and findings, and either approve or deny the requested use. So before, the anticipated daily number of daily customers was 3 to 4. That's now 0 because the retail component has been eliminated. Number of employees at the location, 3 to 4, but they are there for packing e-commerce orders and private appointments, and not for serving customers at a showroom.
There's no showroom. Right?
Yeah, no more showroom. Correct. So.
Should that say that there?
So his application resubmitted with the retail component removed per Planning Commission direction on 6/27/23, and that resubmittal was just like a week and a half ago. So this was in the last meeting. We can go over it if you feel like you need to.
I don't think we do.
Would you guys be
I
okay
think
if I
we're
make a
ready to
motion?
move to a motion.
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission approve the requested use in the PO zone, and the findings just be that it's
no retail, and what did we just say?
On the screen.
No showroom.
On the screen is
Yeah,
the
right
findings
there.
that you can cite.
I think he's adding that we just clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying no showroom and no retail.
I second it.
Are you cool with it?
Yeah. Okay. Can we vote on that?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
I mean, just a comment, it seems like e-commerce is, yeah, a thing, and this seems appropriate to me.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure.
So my name's Zach from Xana Jewelry. And I'm sorry for the delay. I didn't realize I had to resubmit the application. I just thought it was granted based off of those stipulations last time that I agreed to. So thanks for having me bring that in again. I just wanted to inform everybody that I had my inspection today with your building inspector. Everything's approved for that. We're going to move forward with just some hardwood floors and a little dividing wall from the packing area in the back and like the professional consultation and design work that I'll be doing in the front. So we're excited to move forward.
We're excited to have you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I thought we approved it last time too. That's
You
why I
didn't
was
get to
really
that point.
confused. Well, actually, that was the motion I made, so I
Yeah,
don't
this is-
understand why it
okay,
had to be
yeah.
done again.
That's not like.
I thought we moved to move the last item to the next
Yeah.
meeting, not this one, because I thought we already did this one.
Jay, I have to apologize. It was in the package, those pictures from the earlier one. The PDF just opened up and only showed just a little, and it involved the screen, and so I couldn't see anything else. So my mistake, thank you.
Okay.
We're all struggling without Kelly.
Now for the easy one.
I'm a poor replacement for Kelly, I'm sorry.
So yes, now for the easy one.
Go make some money, Zach.
A significant update for sensitive land regulations. We've talked about this a couple of times. We got some feedback generally, and then I went and drafted an ordinance, and I expect it to be tweaked and revised and get some good feedback on it. Obviously, we want you to approve it, but we also want you to make sure it fits what you want for Highland and make sure we protect the lands to the extent we want. I mean, the feedback we heard from y'all was put in some good regulations to protect it, but leave options open for developers to figure out ways of doing it if they can do it in a way without harming, landscapes and adjacent properties and all of that. So we don't really have a lot of specific regulations we have a little bit of floodplain, we have some drainage rules. We talked about that a little bit earlier, how lots are not allowed to put more drainage onto adjacent properties. But other than that, we don't have a lot about slopes. We have some road guidelines about how, grades of our public roads, but not how do you put it across a slope, or, what do we allow for that? So under state law, we're allowed to regulate things, including for geologic hazards and other types of environmental hazards. So our thought is, as Highland has gotten more developed, the remaining places become harder and harder to develop. You saw one that was kind of earlier tonight that's more of a just location and access issue. A lot of the remaining places are on hills or have wetlands or other issues. We've dealt that with the Hollow subdivision a little while ago. We're trying to figure out the best way to manage those moving forward. So we've talked with the council, we brought this to you earlier this year. So what we propose is we incorporate our sensitive lands, and we'll kind of define that, into our review process. So it begins with the concept. When someone comes and talks to us, we say, well, you got to identify a few things, and then we bring it into either the site plan or subdivision review process. Sensitive lands, general categories, as I've proposed them: geologic hazards. Those are your fault lines, your unstable slopes, your steep slopes, your unstable soils, things of that nature. Environmentally sensitive areas, those will be mostly wetlands, streams, rivers. We also included ditches and irrigation canals to the extent they're applicable. Most of them are being buried or will be buried as part of any development, but there are still a few wetlands left. We have flood hazards, which we regulate as part of floodplain insurance through FEMA, and then steep slopes. Environment sensitive. We also have something a little bit about wildlife. We don't have a lot of protected wildlife, and so there's not a lot of regulations on that, but we added that as a consideration. So we require the applicant to come in and do an analysis, a sensitive lands analysis. So they have to go through all of these things and show within their development where they are and how they're proposing to mitigate them. So it could require maps, topographical maps that show how the elevation shifts throughout a site. So we know where there's, 10%, 0 to 10% slopes are kind of the easy to build on, that's great. Beyond that, it starts getting harder and harder. Over 25% is where it gets really hard to build, and the city has a lot of restrictions about putting roads across that and putting roads up it in particular. So we'll ask them to identify those things, so as staff, we'll know how, all right, here's your issues, we gotta work with you, you might be more limited here. You might require wetland delineations, soil investigation, geotech reports, things of that nature. We review it if there is a sensitive land as part of a development, and then we'll basically say, here's what the applicant provided, staff's reviewed it, and here's staff's recommendation specifically regarding sensitive land. So a lot like we already do staff reports, we identify things. It just makes sensitive lands a specific component of that. So onto the details of what we actually regulate. Per the direction, we say no development on land areas subject to landslides or geologic hazards without appropriate studies and engineering and documentation of mitigation on slopes greater than 25%, or if there's a historic fault line or landfall area.
Aren't we all on a historic fault line?
Yes. Andy can talk more, he's not here anymore. I am not an engineer, but there's areas where the fault impacts the property more. I think that's what they're looking for.
Which is over by that gravel pit?
Yes.
In Highland particularly, because I've seen the fault line map.
Yes, there's places where it gets exposed and can shift more, so we're saying, okay, how do you manage this in a way? Now, obviously Utah is somewhat prone to earthquakes. We've had one fairly recently. There's no way to manage it appropriately. I mean, completely, but it's identifying it. We limit how you can do cut and fill. So you have a mountain, you cut out part of the slope in order to make a flat area, and then you fill it on the other side. So you make a flat area. We limit how much you can do that, so you can't just terrace up a mountainside completely. Road slopes, just as a practical matter, you can build steep roads, but it's really hard for the city to maintain. They degrade faster. In terms of snowplow and emergency access, the heavy vehicles can't get up it. We actually have that problem over in Viewpoint. It's very steep at the entrance up to it. It's sometimes hard for snowplows to get up that when it's very wet and heavy. So we have limits on how steep a road can be, and when you cross over a steep slope, how long of a kind of crossing of the slope you're allowed to have. And then we require revegetation and for erosion control if you're doing slope cuts so it doesn't just keep sliding after you cut it, requiring compaction tests and the like. There's environmentally sensitive areas. We've proposed 3 setbacks. So first you have to delineate it. So for wetlands, that's Army Corps of Engineers. You work through a process. They have a very fun process you get to work through if you're touching their wetlands. You don't want to touch their wetlands.
He doesn't really mean it.
I've seen some very high fines from the Army Corps of Engineers. So it's wetlands, get a special delineation. Everything else, if it's a stream or a river, you might have to get a stream alteration permit from the state. And then irrigation channels, you have to identify them where they exist. And then we propose setbacks. So 15 from wetlands, meaning you don't build within 15 feet of them. 50 feet for streams and rivers. Now, again, these are numbers that I have seen other cities use, but these may be tweaked. I was thinking particularly of, is it the Dry Creek area? Mm-hmm. We have that. How much do we want to, and it's measured off the high water marks. You kind of go to the edge of where the river is and say, off of that, regardless of where the property line is, stay a certain amount of feet back, and then if you are regrading things, you get a stream alteration permit. For irrigation, we said 10 feet, or if they have a recorded easement, just to that boundary. That is more of a preservation of access for the ditch company. We actually require, as part of a lot of developments, they have to fill in those and bury them, which then removes the ditch entirely. But for some reason, we have some old ditches. This maintains access to them. We continue to maintain our runoff and drainage into wetlands and all of those things, saying you can't just dump more stuff into wetlands. More as protection for the developer. If there's an identified threatened wildlife habitat, I couldn't really find anything within Highland. It may be unnecessary, to be honest. I've seen other cities have it, so I added it as a consideration, but there's not really much in Highland that's I could find that would be really subject to that.
We might have a tortoise.
Yeah.
Well, we have deer.
You might have the critically endangered seagull somewhere that lands and you need to protect their nest. And then floodplain and flood-prone areas, that's through federal government. They have floodplain maps that they update. We only have a couple of areas, mostly around the American Fork Canyon as it comes out there. Flood-prone areas, there's federal regulations about how much you can change your elevation and all of that. So we just make sure that, all of that.
So can I ask you something?
Please.
I remember in some meeting, we were talking about the timed out period that the company would be doing gravel below Viewpoint.
Yes.
And that is very much a problem area with things coming down and erosion as we're watching the back doors get closer and closer on the Cedar Hills side.
Yes.
Going, the wise man built his house upon a rock. Like we're seeing this primary sound going. Just watching it just get closer. And so I'm just wondering how protected the houses below even now are. I know that they own that fill, but it was for a certain amount of time and then they were going to.
Right, they have a certain amount of time and a certain amount of digging they're allowed to do, and they have to say they have requirements regarding how much slope they're allowed to put in against that. I mean, they're going to go right up to the edge that they can.
Is that slope absolutely not in compliance with what we're coming up with right now?
So this they're grandfathered in. We have, I think, several development agreements and regulations with the gravel pit. They've locked all of their rights in, and I think the city is monitoring because they're coming up towards the end of it. This will apply, however, say, once they're done excavating and maybe they sell it to someone else to develop it, whether and how they can put roads into that area, how they can because all of that ground has been fully readjusted, removed, there's slopes issues, so they'll have to do several soil compaction and soil analyses to show that if they put a house in there, it's not just gonna slide away. So this will apply to the future development in the gravel pit if that ever comes up. It wouldn't really change.
Or if the gravel pit is now encroaching into the yards of those on Suncrest, or not, I'm saying the wrong, whoops, sorry, Viewpoint.
Yes.
Where they end up with issues in their area with erosion.
This wouldn't touch that. That's more of a property fight between them, the gravel pit, their rights. Yeah. This is, if someone were to build something new in Viewpoint, we might say, hey, we need to do a couple extra studies because we know you have this gravel pit right next to you, but they're mostly all built out at this point, so they're kind of as they are. And then we have a standard appeal and variance process, as with any land use thing. State law does provide for when there's geologic hazards. Basically, they say, when it comes to this level of technical things, there's a process applicants can have to request experts, form a panel where each side picks one, and then you agree on a third one of engineers or other experts to decide these types of geotechnical things. So we've added a process to allow for that type of appeal as well. That comes up mostly, if we have a fight over how unstable something is, it's not just your regular hire an attorney to decide the land use issue, it's hire engineers who know what they're talking about to regulate that. So we put out notices. We actually held a hearing on this last time and no one commented, and then you closed the hearing, I believe. We still haven't received any correspondence.
I don't think we got to this one.
Was it not this one?
We moved it to the next one because it took so long last time. So we hadn't gone.
I was probably conflating the two. I apologize, but we still have not received any comments regarding this, regardless of that. I think that's it.
Do we require the developer to do an Alto survey on everything that we do?
Yes. As Chris is aware.
I'm just saying, it's a smart thing. Because that'll identify all these.
It will identify a lot of them if there's a history of it, which is usually what we base it on. It's not based on the city goes out and looks at it and says, I mean, that might happen, but it's usually, oh, it's the gravel pit. We know that might be an issue. It's the Workman property. We know you have a ravine in your back property. We know that exists.
Right.
Or the Alta comes up as there's been a historic issue here. That gives us a basis to say, okay, now we got to mitigate it somehow. How are you handling this?
Jerry, what survey did you say? Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Alta, I'm not familiar.
Alta survey, it's the max survey you can have done on our property. It goes through the public records, it goes through the private records, they actually go out on the property.
Would you mind if I ask some questions just about specifics? So in prohibitions, under the slopes, so no development is allowed on or within 50 feet of more than 40% slopes. Can you just explain the last portion? So I understand that you can't be within 50 feet of a 40% slope where the area containing subslopes cover a topographical area of at least 25 feet vertically and 50 feet horizontally. So it's just saying that if there is some sort of stagger to the slope, whatever that is, but it's essentially you can't develop on anything over 25%, period. And then if there is a steeper slope, you got to build far enough away. And when you develop, is the definition of that meaning roads as well?
Roads have their own separate section.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later.
Yes. So development would not include roads. That's the buildings and other grading. I think development activities.
So let me give you a practical example.
Please.
So let's say it's a 1 acre lot. Could you have a lot where the front portion of it is, you know, meets this, somebody could put a home there, but let's say the back end of the lot goes up at 50% or 40% or whatever the stagger definition is here. So if you're doing a development, from a plat map point of view, you've got sufficient frontage, enough setback to build a home, and then if I understand number 2, slopes, it would just mean that the house itself has to be at least 50 feet away from the 40% portion of that lot.
Correct. It says that's the general rule. There's basically a setback from the 40% slope.
Yeah.
It does say that the planning commission actually can reduce that if they go through a process of showing how we're not going to do too many cuts and fills. We're mitigating our impact on this. So you can reduce that 50 feet closer.
So you could have a 1 acre lot, but on the plat, have a building.
Yep, and
Yes.
basically it says you have to create limits of disturbance that says
They couldn't go back.
here's exactly where you're allowed to build. So the back part is restricted entirely. So it'd be part of the plat review that the planning commission, they would say, okay, this is steep, and normally we say 50 foot back, and maybe that's fine for them, or maybe they show, well, let's extend it 30 feet because we can do that appropriately, and here's our studies that show that. The planning commission says, great, we'll just show them the plat. This is only where you can build. The rest of it's still your property.
You still own it.
You still own it, but you can only build right here. It's how we did it with the hollow subdivision with wetlands. We said, you own these wetlands, they're privately owned, you just can't touch them.
Yeah. And then I have a question on number 3A.
Yes.
So I learned a lesson about how civil engineers apparently do their x-axis over y-axis completely inverted to how everybody in the rest of the world of mathematics does it. So when they say a 2-to-1 slope, they actually mean a half slope.
Yes.
So a 3-to-1 slope means on the, it's not rise over run, it's run over rise.
Yes, 3 feet over, 1 foot up.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that one. And then on 5B, just to make sure that my brain is getting this. So if you do have a steep slope, a portion of the road that you would not allow a road to be built if the slope is larger than 25%. However, what is being proposed here is there may be a short section where you can violate that but restrict it to 100 feet. Why would we do that?
So on 5A says you have to comply with the maximum minimum grades and city specs. We have specs about what the grades of our roads will be allowed. But say you come across something and the mountain pushes out a little bit, so we have to cut through it and that's a steep slope. It just rose up right there, but everywhere else it's on a normal slope. It just kind of stuck out. This says if that's where the road really needs to go, we'll allow it if you can make it short enough and you show how you're going to revegetate, control the erosion, you're going to limit your cutting through the side, because that's where the road really has to go. So it says basically you can't do it unless you, for a small section, 100 feet long, and you still comply with the maximum grade of the road, so you can't just go straight up and down. You cut through it, but you show how to the city engineers.
So retaining wall.
You know, you show your retaining walls, your cuts, your revegetation, that you've managed
Just a short.
that short little cut well enough. Basically, we had no other way to get this road through here. This makes the most sense, and we engineered it appropriately.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't have any other comments. I mean, we don't want to have a Suncrest version 2 slide down the mountain situation.
No, we don't. And I mean, that can happen because ground is ground. We don't always know what it is. But we want to mitigate it as much as possible, to understand it and try to limit it.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Any other discussion? I'm really glad we're doing this. I think it's really important that we do.
The only other question I had was just simply, in Highland, property left to develop, are we talking 2%, 25%? I mean, this is so minimal of an effect. It's
a really small portion. I mean, Highland is 90+% built out at this point. So of what's left, it's the infill developments, like you saw with Magnolia Estates, where it's just weird access ways because it's the inside of what used to be a huge agricultural lot, or it's up on the hill or in ravines where it's awkward to build. So it hasn't been profitable yet because developers know it's more expensive to build there. And this is kind of saying, all right, as that comes up, for those few little places, up on the hill, there's like some potential unannexed property up on near Beacon Hills and Sky Estates. There's a couple of remaining, the gravel pit. There's a couple of other places where there's some slopes. This just addresses those issues.
So has staff taken those few pieces that are left and applied this to it and found any holes?
Not yet, mostly because it's a resource issue. There's a lot of studies that go into this. This says, if you have these issues, applicant, you get to put the cost in of showing how you mitigate it. Okay. And then staff puts in the work to review that to make sure it's done to spec.
I have a silly question. So north of Sky Estates, so if you have the Hollow Road.
Yes.
Basically they're clearing and grabbing hundreds of acres. That's not a Highland thing, is it? That's Draper that has come over.
Yes, so Draper is there, and the one off of Highland Boulevard, we understand, is not an actual development. It's a home.
One home.
Oh.
A single home.
One home with a baseball field and a soccer field as a part of their development.
And that's in Highland, or is it in Draper?
Draper.
Okay, all right.
They will access off Highland Boulevard, but it is in Draper
Yeah,
proper.
I've got a couple of people asking what development is, and the answer is it's just
one person.
One person. I don't know. I think the number I heard was 50,000 square foot home.
With a 10,000 square foot guest home, and it's on, I think, 100 acres.
It's 100 acres.
Well, that ought to help the schools.
That's Draper's deal, not ours.
So that, if you get any questions about that, that's not Highland.
No,
We're all
no.
watching it because it's interesting, and also there's some drainage things going on there, but
Yeah, and I was just using that as a poster child. we horse ride around there a lot, and we've just gone, oh, this is a drainage nightmare. It's like Andy's Christmas, unfortunately.
Andy loves drainage.
Well, I think you've done an excellent job, Rob, and the rest of the folks that have contributed. This is great.
Yeah, I like it. Let's go ahead to recommendations.
We have,
Yeah, I just need to see it. I don't have my thing.
So I'd like to make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amending certain sections of the DEV Code and adopting a new Chapter 8 in the DEV Code related to the regulation of development on sensitive lands.
I second the motion. Let's go ahead and vote.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. Sorry, the next thing on there.
It is.
General plan, comprehensive update review. Jay, would you go ahead and discuss that with us?
Okay. So the general plan, sometimes called the comprehensive or master plan, is an advisory document that outlines the city's vision for its future. It's a collection of maps, information, and policies that describe where you as a city are and where you want to be and how you'll get there. The general plan indicates your city's priorities and intentions for the future. The state of Utah requires every municipality to have a general plan. The city's last update was in February of 2008, 15 years ago, so it's certainly time to update this important guiding document for the city. As the initial step in the update process, staff have drafted a 4-page request for proposal document, or RFP, to solicit qualified firms to partner with the city for the general plan update. We plan on issuing the RFP in early September. The backbone of the general plan is the transportation elements. We will ensure that whichever firm we contract with will have expertise and a good track record in that area. Additionally, the state of Utah not only requires every city to have a general plan, but the state has certain required parts as well. One recently added required element pertains to water use and preservation by the city and plans for the future. Another required part is a moderate income housing element. We plan to have strong involvement from the community, and we'll also look for a partner who excels in that area as well. In the packet, I did note that it is the Planning Commission's purview to propose a general plan to the City Council. So our very first step is the issuance of this RFP. And so what we're asking you for is we have a draft document for you and would like for you to give us feedback on that document. It's the last 4 pages of the packet. We need give you 2 weeks to give us feedback so that we can incorporate your suggestions and then bring it to the council at their next meeting so that they can approve it, and then we can issue in early October. That's the October 4th date.
Okay.
Is when we plan to release that to the public to get firms to present their proposals. Yeah, and so we just like your feedback. It's, the RFP is based off of, a good template for what needs to be is required by law, and asks for elements that we felt were important as staff to ensure that we were getting a good partner that had competency in areas that were important. So I'm very mindful of the fact that this is something that the Planning Commission should be very deeply involved in. I know some of you were a little miffed that you weren't brought in on the active transportation plan. That is definitely being rectified in this process. This is your bag, as the youth say. So here's your opportunity at the ground floor to be involved and give us feedback on the RFP document.
And you would like this via email?
Yeah. So the email is included on at planning@highlandcity.org.
And how built out are we?
I'm sorry?
Didn't you say we were 95% built out?
It's like 90-95.
Andy said it was 92%, but that was at the beginning of the year, so we're probably getting...
And
Chris bumped it up to 93.
We're going to spend how much on this general plan process? Do we have a budget or idea of what that's going to cost?
We do have a budget.
What's that? $1 million?
120.
What?
If we say it out loud, then the contractors will know.
So I can't find it in our budget.
It's in the budget document, but we don't want to throw our, all that out
It's
there.
on public record.
$500.
So we've got, we have an
Like
amount
too
that
visual.
should be, Saratoga Springs did an update a couple years ago for around how much we've put in our budget. So
I'm just trying to figure out if that's worth 2% of the city that's not been developed to spend. And
Well, my opinion about
move
this...
along on the plan that we have and just finish.
No, but Jerry, my opinion about this is we have a lot of inconsistencies and stuff that is just all higgledy-piggledy, and so we may not be reinventing the wheel other than just cleaning up.
But we've also been cleaning up code along the way, as staff's been finding things that are inconsistent, so.
you also can, one of our thoughts is, a lot of our prior general plan was about how are we going to develop and grow Highland? Most of that's done. So the question becomes, how do we maintain Highland? How do we finish off the remaining public things that we want to do? And if redevelopment is to be considered, what does that look like? Or does that not look like something? Because we don't want redevelopment of areas. It's something to think about. That could be addressed.
It'll be a relevant document for decades to come, even after everything is built.
And the state's putting a lot of pressure on cities, as you know, relative to moderate income housing and development, you know, and so honestly, from that perspective, we need to update it and make sure we've crossed our T's, dotted our I's, so we don't get something that Highland is not fully intending to do. And there's certain parts, especially like the transportation plan, that needs to be updated badly.
Yeah, and the big hot potato is the Longhorn Field, the 78 acres, where there's a strong push to make SR92 strip malls as you go down, and then for that 78 acres to be commercial. And personally, I'm dead set on no ways. It's R140.
The current general plan protects that. And the traffic thing you're talking about, didn't we just do something for between us and Alpine? And
well, yes, for active transportation, right? But we're talking about remaining, what else does the city need to be building out as far as roads go? Some network related to impact fees, because we're actually just about done with what we've said we need to do. So now it's time to take a second look and say, okay, incorporate some of those elements of what we've just done into our transportation master plan, because that, as you know, right, from a development perspective, relates to what we can charge for impact fees and then what we can do with those impact fees.
okay, I don't know.
Okay. So anyway, there's the email. Please have comments back by September 12th. That's 2 weeks from today. Okay. Well, you got to ask me that.
I promise you it's ING.
Go with the one that's in the packet. So, I can't even claim pregnancy brain like Kelly could. It is planning. Planning.
Did you notice Rob said y'all, by the way?
Don't do a good job, but do our best.
She's irreplaceable, obviously. Great.
All right, planning commission and staff communication items are city council meeting August 1st, 7th, August 15th, city council, and August 29th, planning commission.
No, that didn't get updated. Sorry.
September 5th, city council, I'm going to keep September 12th, is that right?
Audrey, is your mic on?
No, actually turn it on. So, and the deadline for the 2 weeks is
September 12th.
September 12th to get those responses back. Okay, thank you. Would we like to make a motion to close the meeting?
I have a question before.
Oh, yeah, please.
Rob, when do we do for some more training from you?
Sorry, what?
You know, we're supposed to have so much training.
Oh, yeah.
When do we do for that?
I will look at Kelly's whiteboard and decide that.
Can you make
Some of them are videos she sent.
Can you make it about easements, property rights?
Would love that.
Because a lot of stuff keeps coming up that I hear, and I'm not going to be specific. Why does somebody have a certain right to an easement? Just the same reason the city has rights to foot trails. The city has rights of, I can't go put a well on my property.
Right.
Property rights doesn't mean you own everything on that piece of property. It comes with restrictions. That's why we have title reports. And just because he has an easement against my property, that easement benefits me, and it can't just be ignored by city council or planning commission. I just think there's a bit of a, like, I'm a property rights guy 100%, but that property rights is a real thing. When you have trail easements, you have setback requirements that are bigger than certain things, like what we just talked about, 100-foot setback for a house to be built because of slope. Well, there's also big setbacks for other things that are done in negotiation.
Right.
When other properties come in, and the city can't just turn around and say, what rights do they have over that? Well, we have to negotiate in good faith with our neighborhoods. When we give buffers, the buffers mean something. They don't just go away after a period of time when everybody's not mad anymore. And so I think it would be good for Planning Commission to understand what easements are property rights. Doesn't mean you own everything. You don't own the sky above you. You don't own the minerals below you. I can't drill a well on my property, which I could, but it would be illegal. Maybe I did. I don't know. But there's a reason I can't. There's a reason I can't. And so I think we just have to understand it, because some of these discussions I've heard are like, property, they own everything. No, you don't. That's why we have title reports. You bought the land, but you don't, there's restrictions to it, including the people that built on our easements. We're telling them to get off. Well, yeah, there's a reason. Those easements are, anyway. I just think that it'd be good for the Planning Commission to fully understand that, because it's kind of rippling a little bit when I hear comments of they can't. Yeah, we can.
It's a great topic of training.
And when the city gives away a trail easement for nothing, we need to understand those easements are valuable to the person who has it on their property. You know, I'm telling you, we missed out on a $750,000 opportunity when we gave away a trail system. They would have all easily paid $50,000 apiece to get it off. But we just said, we're never going to put that trail in, so we're going to give it to you. So I just think if we understand more what the value of a restriction is to the property owner, so that when we negotiate, I just think we need to negotiate in good faith. When we put easements, we have to honor those easements. Those are contracts. So that's my 2 cents.
It's a great topic.
Quick couple more dates that might be interesting to the Planning Commission. September 12th, we're having a special city council meeting to appoint somebody to fill the vacancy created when Sarah Peterson had to move out of state. So you're more than welcome to attend that as a public meeting if you're interested. We have 14 candidates already for that one spot. So
are they being appointed for the remainder?
For the remainder, so 2 years to fill the rest of her term.
So you have until the 5th. Put your name in.
That's true. So it could go up. We have another week left. And on September 18th, that's a Monday, we're going to be holding an information meeting relative to the alcohol item that came before you. Was that last time? So City Council pushed a pause and said we want to get some resident feedback on this. And so the information meeting will be held on September 18th. We're working on our communication pieces for that right now. And then on a different topic, if we're ready to change dates, one thing that HR has requested of us to have a conversation with you guys about is right now our you as planning commissioners are on our payroll system, which creates some burdens because you're only here once a month and we're not regularly paying you. As we move towards a new system, we've asked that what most cities do is actually you almost act like contractors, where we will give you a check still, but it won't come through our payroll system. And so you'll be a 1099 employee or a 1099 contract with us. So expect some changes and some emails from us on that topic.
What about the fact that some of those, for the 6 years or whatever that I've done it, that it's going into a retirement fund and blah, blah, blah?
You actually do get a small portion in your retirement. I don't know if you know this, you have a retirement fund because you have been serving with us. It's a very small amount because it's like 7.5% of what you make, which is a small amount, right? We absolutely appreciate your service. Thank you for what you're doing, right? Don't stop coming because of what I'm saying here. Actually, one thing that City Council put in place this July that we realized we missed, you guys are actually getting a pay increase, so as a part of the new budget, and so that we're hoping will compensate a small amount to thank you for your service.
I guess I'll stay on that, Audrey.
So I was just going to ask, that's really interesting, because when they signed me up for all that stuff, the URS is what it is.
Yes.
And then they sent me a letter saying, you don't apply for anything, none of this you qualify for, so you're not on anything. It was really confusing.
I'll get some clarification and make sure as we change you over that you guys know exactly what to expect. And if you have money in a retirement account, how to get it, so.
It was a direct contradiction of what I was initially told.
Yeah.
But what I would request, is there a way that I can be exempt and not paid? I would prefer this to be a voluntary and no payment whatsoever.
So I'll talk to that. So I didn't fill out any of that paperwork.
He wants me
And
to
I
do
just donate what I get paid to the library.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Because it was more work to do the tax.
I don't want to do the taxes or worry about it, and I didn't do it for money, obviously. My rate is much higher than that, so.
So I assume those arrangements will just stay in place, right? Because I'm not an employee.
We will work it all out with you. I just wanted to give you a verbal warning before you started getting emails from HR,
All right.
so, about this.
So that still didn't answer my question of, can I not be paid?
I know that we've worked out with commissioners and council members in the past to donate their income to other sources, and so it'd probably be something like that.
Okay, because that still goes to your taxes, and it just adds more to your taxes, because you got to account for it.
Instead of
anyways,
paying,
I just want to be off the books, and this is voluntary service, and I don't get any payment, I don't have to worry about the taxes. Donation is great, but with the way it is, it doesn't, there's no benefit, it just costs me more money because I got to have more taxes.
no, I see what you're saying. Like, instead of paying an individual, that $75, I can't remember your exact
$56
earnings,
is the last
goes
one I
to the library, for example.
Yeah, if we could do something like that, I would love to do that.
Okay, you guys can talk to HR about that.
I did, and HR's told me to
Audrey's
go
done.
away.
Well, Tara, Aaron sent you back. All right, so do we have anything else? Okay, thanks for letting us know. We'll look for that big pay raise.
I move to adjourn.
We
I
like
second.
Okay.
Yes,
that's-
yes.
We need to vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, thank you. Yes, Heather?
Well.
Okay, so who made the motion and who seconded it? Heather needs to know for the records. Who, Chris? Chris. And Jerry seconded it. Thank you.
slope down right here, well, for frustrating like trailers. They go back to we actually, intended for them to drive and make the loop, but that might be a bit. Right, yes, it helps us know what this is doing. Could it make that? So you need a really big radius to turn. Are there so many